We normally don't do what would it be, disclaimers, but this episode kind of gets us as close to the Holocaust as we've been doing 2.5, 3 years of this thing. And I had a couple bad days doing research this week because when you're talking about the Nuremberg Trials, it's going to heavily involve not just the war crimes of the actual war itself being fought, but all the things that were going on inside Germany as well.
Yeah, and up until this point, we don't have the word Holocaust that comes out till after this. This is the final solution, or in Göring's words, the total solution, is how the attack on Jews was really framed.
I think one of the hardest things to kind of wrap my head around during research on this is we're always looking at something, how many years removed, where all of this information has been able to be compiled. And when you're looking at it, it's like, oh, this information was just always available. This comes at a time very, very quickly after the end of World War II, at least in Europe, that all of this information has to be found, cataloged, documented, sifted through, found out what concerns what, and then start putting together a list of war crimes that then have to actually have enough evidence to be convictable, or however you want to state it. And so the information that they're going off, so many things come out during the Nuremberg trials. This is when most people find out about the atrocities that are being committed.
And truly, the Nuremberg trial is kind of half trial, half putting this information on the record.
Yeah.
It's letting everybody understand kind of the magnitude of the atrocities that were committed by the Germans, while at the same time trying to parse that with giving a fair, impartial trial as the victors trying to basically not do what they did after World War I.
And at the same time to build upon what they did after World War I, because the Treaty of Versailles didn't do shit. It was a piece of paper at that point signed inside a railway car, and there wasn't, there was financial repercussions and stuff like that, but it wasn't like people were held. The people that were in charge of the Weimar Republic and everything during World War I, those people were normally still alive, despite what had happened during the course of that war. This is a circumstance when, after finding out, and if we want to put aside the Holocaust aspect of it or anything like that, this would still be going on, because part of the discovery of the Holocaust actually takes place during the research for actually what to try them as far as aggressive war against other countries, international treaties, things like that. So even just setting aside the Holocaust aspect of it, which is really discovered at this point, there's still so many things that these people are guilty of.
Well, you also have to go back and look. After World War I happens, they slap all those monetary fines that you're talking about, all of the money that Germany owes for reconstruction of Europe after the war and all of that. And we talked about it during a multitude of episodes. It didn't do anything to make the Germans feel like they were responsible. It just made the German populace angry because they didn't have any money. They were struggling themselves to try to put themselves back together after the war. Even though they weren't invaded, there was still so much that was pushed towards the military effort. It's tough to get back to a normal society.
We kind of talked about, over the course of the studying for the week, you had texted me to ask about setting a precedent where the leaders of a nation that choose to go to war or essentially inflict harm on another nation, if they were culpable and responsible for that and could be tried as normal, that would be a huge deterrent from anybody just choosing to go to war and worrying about only losing their citizens.
Yeah, and we're talking about a time where the ICC, the international courts that has The Hague in the Netherlands, where these international criminals are supposed to be tried, these leaders of nations, but they're mostly toothless in name now. This is like the one shining moment besides the Rwandan genocide, I believe, and then the Slavic wars. Not the Slavic wars, the Yugoslavian genocide, I believe, is what happened, where they're able to step in and do something about it, but I mean, there's world leaders today that have active warrants issued by the ICC today that are still just in charge of their countries. And we don't have a force to go in and catch them.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just enter a country and take its leader and not expect to be fighting a full-blown war at that point in time.
You're going to be fighting to get to the leader.
Exactly.
Basically. All right. Well, without waiting you guys wait. Jesus, I can't even talk right now. Without making you wait any longer, let's get into the Nuremberg Trials. Okay, I'm going to try to figure out how to talk good for the rest of the podcast. This comes as a direct result, surprise, surprise, of World War II, the victory in Europe, and the actual talk about the formation of some type of international court had been kind of in the works since, I believe, back in like 42, and even a little bit before that, but not so much on a more cooperative international scale, right?
Yeah, and it's not the Allies that are calling for an international court. It's these governments in exile that are hearing about what the Germans are doing in their countries. They're like, hey, fellas, you're still in the war. You're fighting. You need to start setting something up. You're confident that you're going to win, right? The Allies are going to win this. They're going to stop the Germans. And in 42, we're already past the Battle of Britain. I believe Stalingrad maybe going on or has gone on.
Yeah, I want to say that was 41, 42.
And so the war is certainly shifting a little bit, and these governments in exile start putting pressure on the Allies to say, you guys need to deal with this. This is something to where you thought you took care of it after World War I. Really, all you did was piss off and blame an entire country and then punish them and allowed a guy like Hitler to walk in and use all of these punishments that you gave him after World War I, or gave the country after World War I, to then rally these people against you. And yeah, you got a tough break. The Great Depression is Germany's kind of on its way up and doing better. Great Depression sacks that. And that's what really gives Hitler the ability to walk in and say, well, even what they were building fell.
Yeah.
We need a change. We need something like this to happen. And so I'm sure all those other countries are probably thinking, we don't like being invaded. You guys are the only guys left in this fight. Stop him and then punish everybody to the point to where nobody wants to try this again.
The Soviet Union was just like, we have an idea.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and just anyone we get a hold of, we'll take care of the punishments. And the England and the US are just like, let's actually slow down and talk about this.
Well, it's perfect, too, because October 43, this UN War Crimes Commission meets for the first time. Russia's not a part of it. Russia's probably doing some war crime in 1943 quite a bit.
Yeah.
So they're maybe not going to get the call to be a part of the commission.
What are you guys meeting about? We're going to discuss war crimes. Really? Okay. You guys mind holding off on the war crimes discussion till maybe this whole thing between us and Germany kind of works itself out? And then we'll do then the war crimes start at that point.
Yeah, we're just finding out that you guys are doing the war crime stuff now. Maybe can we have an amnesty for anything? Because I got to get the troops under my command.
Hypothetically, if we were committing war crimes as well, not saying that when they came in, the Germans didn't do, they absolutely
did it first.
Did. But let's just say, hypothetically, there were war crimes being committed. What would you allow for a cool-off period?
Yeah.
You know, it's a big ship. It takes a while to slow it down. So how about you give us 44 to 45, and we'll try to have it wrapped up by then, if there were war crimes going on.
Yeah, no, we could do that. You guys need a week or two. Year 3 tops.
Mm-hmm. End of the war, maybe.
Yeah. There was something that Russia liked to get in on, though. On November 1st, 1943, the Allies, including Moscow, go ahead and issue this declaration to the Nazi leadership. all of the signatories that were intent to pursue them to the uttermost ends of the earth in order that justice might be done. Russia not too keen talking about war crimes, but the threatening letter they send to the Nazis, Russia's like, yeah, bring it over here. I'll sign it too. Also, very interesting that they just didn't send one to Italy.
I don't know if they were that worried.
They figured that Mussolini would fizzle out on his own, so
Yeah.
they really didn't need to punish anybody.
Yeah.
They're still trying to figure out if there's even any Italians on the fight. Like, they're calling to the front lines and asking soldiers if they've heard any Italian being spoken on the battlefield.
No, not here. And at the same time, if information gets back to Mussolini, he's like, so wait, they didn't mention us. Okay, we're just going to actually calm some stuff down. We're going to get a little quiet just so they don't notice us down here.
Yeah, maybe they'll forget about us. Interestingly enough, there was a Soviet jurist named Aron Trenin who kind of develops this concept of crimes against peace, crimes against nations who weren't courting war and were just doing their own thing.
It's like a rule of decency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't come into my yard. Don't start a fight. Let me be.
We should be civilized enough at this point, and especially after World War I and the toll that it took, that you definitely know better.
Yeah. That's really all that it is.
Yeah.
Crimes against peace is a no-brainer for start to finish of World War II. It actually kind of becomes this central piece to the charges that would be brought against the defendants. When it comes to trying to figure out the way that a trial or an international tribunal is going to go down, you clearly have issues between three democracies, and I'm only saying three because de Gaulle pushed the French into everything that the Allies did.
Yeah.
You have the Soviets, who are a communist country, who don't always have the fairest of trials.
Their judiciary system is lacking in some ways.
Yeah, and they do still have a judiciary system. They still do have kind of a
Judicial system, not judiciary, Jesus.
Judiciary.
When you refer to it, it's the judiciary. But if it's the judicial system, am I just making words up? Judicial.
Judicial.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were a little hard on the eye.
Yeah, sorry about that.
But
what are we smoking, by the way? Jesus.
this is Alaskan Thunderfuck.
Okay.
I figured that would be
hello, old friend.
a good episode. The Soviets have their own way of doing things. You have the British and the English, or the British and the U.S. citizens, the U.S. delegation, who have pretty similar ways of doing things in court, who have pretty similar legal systems as far as how to punish.
Well, I mean, they kind of came from each other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a copy and paste type deal.
Do you guys still wear wigs? No, we actually don't.
We're edgy. We did the revolution. No wigs for us.
Well, I mean, the lice and all that kind of stuff. We actually were able to dial back on the syphilis a little bit, so the wigs weren't as necessary.
We're just going to make the guys in government wear them. We're not going to make the judges wear them. And maybe they did. Thankfully we've...
If anyone is right for syphilis, it would have been early colonial American politicians.
Yeah, I'm sure it was back then too. Syphilis is very old. A history of STDs would be a fun episode.
Oh yeah, you think this is depressing.
Then you get the French, who kind of have their own system. But Soviets are pushing towards this sham trial. Like, hey, we'll put all these guys on trial. We'll make the show happen. But it's going to be predetermined that every one of these guys is dead. Like, nobody's getting acquitted in a trial that the Russians are leading.
In fact, I think it's best we just don't let them speak. We stand up, we make them sit in front of us, tell us everything. We'll tell them everything they did. There's not going to be any type of cross-examination or allow the defense to speak at all. And then we just take them and how are we going to do this? I'm trying to think of the way that, based on how the Soviets wanted to just do a show trial, if they were like, but we're going to have a grand celebration for the actual deaths. St. Peter's Square. Stalin is going to do it himself.
Tell you what.
You know that would have fucking happened.
Maybe. There's a good chance Stalin would have been there. He would have been the guy pulling the levers.
Okay, hold on. I know this is deviating a bit, but what percentage do you put at that Stalin himself took part in killing some Nazi POWs?
100.
Okay, yeah.
He definitely did it for fun.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
He didn't.
I won't kill anything lower than a major.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As we did learn during the Stalin episode, the guy was just ruthless. So that kind of is hey, Russia, we're not doing a sham trial. The Brits were kind of apathetic. They just kind of wanted to move on. Summarial executions of all of the top leaders is probably going to fit the bill. It's something that they can be on. We don't need a trial to know what all these guys did.
That seems very English. That seems like an old school English way. I mean, we've talked about England in many episodes as far as like that time where it was first kind of getting its legs. That just kind of seems like that would be their thing. Like, what do we do to the forces that are against us? Like, just fucking kill them.
Do you guys have a Tower of London? If you don't, just bring them to us. We'll throw them in the Tower of London and just let them rot.
Yeah.
United States, of course, on our high horse, as always. We want this fair and impartial trial. I'm just saying that because we always have to be the level head in the room.
I have another theory there. We're the furthest away from where this shit's popping off.
Well,
we've had to come overseas twice, participate in the war because everybody fucking contributed in this. And at that point, we're just like, okay, if we really want to go ahead and keep this thing from happening again, we got to make it look legit, and we got to make it look so horrible as far as the punishment and who's going to be responsible for this, that no other countries, especially all these countries in Europe, start shit up again, and we have to send a bunch of troops over to try to help. Yeah, it was self-serving a little bit.
I would like to believe that, but at the same time, war isn't something that we've shied away from as a nation.
It's not.
So I don't know if it was necessarily that, but I think it was the United States wanting to put everybody on a higher plane.
A third world war in the next 10 to 15 years is still going to look pretty bad. The nation's going to be like, the fuck?
You mean Korea? The Korean War in the 50s?
It didn't look good.
Yeah. But at the same time, we weren't exactly trying to shy away from things.
I'm not saying that.
Yeah, I just think that it was trying to set a standard.
The same shit, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of the same kind of, we need to make this.
We were trying to white knight it.
Well, and on an international stage, you want to get it right the first time, right?
Yeah.
Like, we don't need to have 6 different tribunals to do this kind of stuff.
Wait till we get a load of the fucking American judges.
Mm-hmm. And then you have France, who was just there for the good time. Whatever anybody wanted to do, France.
As long as we have a seat there.
Exactly. As long as we get to be at the table. Between 44 and 45, the U.S. begins planning for this international tribunal. There's no decision that's made at Yalta. Just trying to get this stuff figured out by May 2nd, 1945. So you have a length of time where there's still May 2nd, 1945 is right around Surrender Day.
It was, May 1945.
So we still are coming up to the surrender. We've been working on this plan for a few years and haven't come up with something yet.
Correct. But we also, at that point, we knew that the Soviets were in Berlin at that point and everything. But there's still this area between Berlin and the Allied line.
Mm-hmm. A long ways.
We didn't know that it was going to end like that, to where as soon as Hitler fucking kills himself, or did he, it goes to Donetsk at that point, and Donetsk is just like, we're done. We didn't know that that was all occurring. For all we knew, the way that they were fighting up to that point is we were going to be trying to take every mile of that area leading up to Berlin. So, but they still should have been fucking prepared. Yeah. I mean, they knew that they were advancing. So at the same time, I can see it from the perspective of, we got to win this thing and wrap this up, because if our eyes are off the prize to even look at this court or try to put more attention onto this, we're going to lose more people every day that this thing is prolonged. So there's a balance to it.
Well, even I believe it was the Potsdam conference that they got together, the tensions are still so tight to where Stalin is asked what he thinks they should do, and he says that he believes killing 50,000 Germans will fix the problem. And Churchill is shocked. He knows that the upper echelon that he was talking about summarily getting rid of doesn't number 50,000.
Listen here, I will line up 200 of these men and shoot them in the back of the head. 50,000 is a little excessive.
So Stalin and Churchill are bickering. Churchill ends up leaving. Roosevelt has to get his Hot Wheels on to go out and chase down Churchill.
Burn rubber, baby.
Just say, hey, man, it's Stalin. We've dealt with this guy the entire time. We're like at the 1 yard line. Let's just get it over the end zone and make it happen. They come back in. FDR sitting between them, and he goes, I don't think 25,000 or I don't think 50,000 is necessary. I believe 49,000 should suffice. Like, just to try to break the ice between
Stalin
these two
took
guys.
deal.
Yeah.
Fuck, no, I didn't mean to say that. It's a joke.
You idiots, I'd have done it for 25,000. This is perfect. We get to a London.
They call that the old Soviet switcheroo.
Yeah, May 8th. Going back to this Yalta conference where there's no choice being made. May 2nd is then. May 8th, Germany agrees to an unconditional surrender, ending the war. So now we jump into a time where you knew the war was coming to an end. You don't have a plan in place. You're also starting to get all of this intel coming in from all of these liberated concentration camps that weren't found until the German retreat happened because they were so deep behind German lines. We had no idea.
So the time frame between the end of the war, so again, you said May 8th, the start of the Nuremberg Trials, and what we're going to be focusing on during this episode is the primary Nuremberg trial that featured 25 of the highest leaders in various aspects of the Nazi regime, whether that be finance, government, the military. There's just there's a couple people from all over, mostly military, of course, but there's other people that are from other sectors.
Oh, it's the Nazi sphere of influence.
Correct. Whoever had a hand in essentially the support of this and was benefiting from it.
Yeah.
So this actually begins November 20th of 1945. Now, thinking about it from the perspective of just say even May 20th to November 20th, that's what, 5 months? June,
5,
July,
6 months.
August, September, October, November, 5 or 6
months.
months. You're having to go through war-torn Germany, all of these military installations. You're trying to gather all of these documents that most of which have probably tried to have been destroyed. I know that there was a situation where at like the naval headquarters, they were trying to pile all of these documents into a pool, like a dried pool, empty one, pour petrol and gas on it, and then light up. And Donitz was like, yeah, we can't do that. You know what's going to happen? Then they'll just make up their own shit about what we were doing. So a lot of this stuff is probably destroyed, a lot of the really, really heinous shit, but there's things that are too large to destroy, like you said, the concentration camps. They're having to gather, and everybody is kind of working together, but at the same time gathering information for themselves. And when I say that, I think that maybe like England and America were probably a little bit closer in gathering the information, considering they were more integrated. Russia was just gathering its own info and, evidence for this trial.
It probably had a few guys that were there writing some stuff down and making some documents.
That's also tracking down and capturing these people that you're finding are named in the documents to try to have them stand trial. So to do that all in 6 months is pretty astounding to me.
Yeah, you have during this whole entire time the rat lines. The I believe it's Nazis in South America is our episode on it. But where these high-ranking officials are either knocking themselves off or they're running. They're trying to get out of there.
And 25 doesn't sound like a lot when you think about the entire Nazi apparatus as far as how far it spread. 25 is just kind of the ones that they could find. I mean, they found a lot more. This is just the trial of these 25. They found a lot more. But as far as high command, a lot of those guys, Hitler, Bormann, who we're going to talk about here in a second, Goebbels, which, all three of them, but mostly Hitler and Goebbels, Heinrich Himmler, those guys had all killed themselves. So these are kind of the next guys down the line.
Yeah, when we talk about the list, they are in this sphere of influence that was kind of just the main driver behind everything that the Germans did. You have the London Conference, June 26th through August 2nd, where the Allies started to negotiate on how to proceed with the trial. They set out something called the Nuremberg Charter, and it just basically is the format with the charges of crimes against peace, crimes against humanity, and war crimes. Now, the only thing that we had prior precedents for as law on the books was war crimes. So a big part of the defense that is going to be mounted by the Germans is you can't charge us with something that wasn't a law at the time we did it.
Yes, we can.
Well, and that's, I mean,
That was their argument, of course, because we didn't know there was a law for that's like fucking a horse and being like, oh, there wasn't a law for that. Like, well, we now have to make a law that says you can't do that.
there wasn't a sign on the wall in the bar that said you can't finger your own butt at the bar. Like, how am I supposed to know that that's indecent exposure?
Again, common decency.
Yeah. So, and like on the surface, you would make an argument for a lot of different things. It's like, well, it wasn't illegal when I did it. Mm-hmm. But when you ratchet up to the atrocities that were committed,
It's a moral rule of law
Common
at that
sense.
point where there's just essentially something that either crosses that line, which everyone knows will cross that line. There's no question about it that you crossed a line. And those are the things that they're also going to charge in addition. Like, how could you not know that this was something you shouldn't have been doing?
and that's not to say that everybody in World War II didn't cross that line.
Yeah.
We all did. It's fact. I mean, the French may not have, but it's because they were out so early.
I mean, French resistance did.
Yeah.
Definitely. But again, it's circumstances, man.
And it's what led to the Allies crossing that line can be justified in a
started this
court
shit?
of law.
It's exactly that. They're on crime because they started this shit. They're going to answer for how many people died, regardless of what side they were on. They're still culpable and responsible for that.
Yeah.
What's the reason that Nuremberg was chosen?
It's the first easy reason. The reason on the surface is because it was like the one place that still had a court building in Germany.
I think it was several reasons, because I think maybe they could have held off and found another place. The main reason I think they chose that is because between 1923 and 1938, until they came into full power and moved stuff to to Berlin and everything, Nuremberg essentially was kind of the spiritual home of the Reich. And that's where they had the Nuremberg rallies. It was propaganda palooza for the Nazis. It basically served to instill basically the myth and the legend of Hitler as this messianic figure. Albert Speer is one of the ones that designed it's kind of a stadium / pavilion, big flat area with like big grandstands around the back of it.
The architect of the Third Reich.
The architect of the Third Reich. So Nuremberg, and the reason they chose Nuremberg is because it had significance and was important in the Holy Roman Empire. So they were trying to use that symbology as well when they were rising to power.
Significant enough that they went ahead and created the Nuremberg laws, which were the laws that basically stripped the Jews of any
citizenship. Yeah, 1935 is when they came up with those.
You could go citizenship. It's kind of human rights.
Exactly. That was just the first step.
Yeah.
I mean, you make them non-citizens, and then what rights do they have to protection from laws and things like that? Mm-hmm. So this stadium, if you pull up images of it, Nuremberg rallies, and the amount of people that are filling the stadium courtyard and everything is pretty staggering. I think they said at one point during one of the rallies that held up to like 700,000 people were in attendance. And Albert Speer would do this thing to kind of propagate this messianic image of this wow and awe. There's this area where he lined up 130 like aircraft spotlights, like for searching for like any aircraft guns and stuff like that, and they would all shine up into the sky. So it was this weird like wall of light. They called it the Cathedral of Light. So that served as this spiritual home for the Reich, I think, by basically being like, oh, this is where it was born. This is where you're going to see us kill it.
Yeah. And it still had a functioning courthouse and a hotel and a couple other things to where they could kind of keep the capacity.
The prison was already existing behind that, right?
They had the prison that was attached there. They had the Ashcan, which was a prison in, I believe it was Luxembourg, potentially, where they were held pre-trial before they were moved in for the trial.
Didn't know where they were going to send them quite yet.
Yeah, well, they were just basically waiting for a spot because even though you have this perfect place in Nuremberg to be able to do this, you still have to then outfit a courtroom for a trial this big.
You also have to secure a partially bombed out city. It's not like the city hadn't been hit. It had been. It was just the courthouse and everything that was still standing. So you have to make this place essentially completely secure. You have to prevent any of these people being brought in to stand trial from being assassinated, which somebody definitely would fucking do that.
Yep.
You then have to keep them under watch to make sure that they can't fucking kill themselves. so they can stand trial. So there's a whole, even between the end of the war, them moving in and getting this going. Again, that's only 6 months to choose the location and get it ready.
You also have a bombed out town of Nurembergians that probably isn't too pumped about what happened to their city under your airplanes.
The guys that are on trial are the guys whose fault it is.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's hard in that scenario to be a German and be able to understand that.
That's why I feel like that place was chosen, because really think about it, man. They could have taken them to London. They could have tried them in Parliament or had a big spectacle and everything like that. They did it at that location because that's what was going to be the most symbolic, I think.
They also had to put knives on the front of their Jeeps to cut tripwires that would be pulled across the streets to try to decapitate soldiers.
Oh, shit.
Yes. Like I said, these Germans were not happy with what happened to their town, and they had one person or one allied group to blame because, again, in retrospect, we can look at this and 100% say who was in the wrong during World War II, right? 1945, these people are trying to put their lives back together, and now they're seeing the Germans, who after World War I were basically told the entire populace was guilty, are now seeing another trial happen. They're going to be angry.
Okay. I like your thought process on this too. Put it in the perspective of these people at this point only know they lost the war.
Yeah.
They have been told by their government, by the propaganda arm and everything, that they were in the right in doing this. And
the right.
The right. Yeah, exactly. And this is before any of the information comes out publicly about, again, the atrocities, the Holocaust, everything. These people just see them as enemy invaders in their city that are now bringing the people that they feel were fighting for them in to try them. So, yeah, I didn't even think about the aspect of a very hostile environment there.
It's just...
Which makes it even... Again, I feel like that drives home the point of like they were willing to go in there and do it there despite that.
There were also other issues within Nuremberg itself because the hotels that they had, basically, they had a hotel where it was just media. It was everybody that was there from all over the world.
Again, eyes of the world are on this thing.
Then you had an area where the judges so they didn't fraternize and there wasn't any kind of monkey business between them.
Tight fucking security there.
Yeah. All these people are getting truckloads of food brought in because they weren't affected by the war. You have all of these other people in Nuremberg who are still bombed out, who don't have food and rations coming in because, again...
I got to imagine there's probably an outreach of doing that to try to at least ingratiate a little bit. You're not wanting to make more enemies than you have to. I want to believe that the Allies were like, bring in a shit ton of stuff so then that way at least they can't hate us for not having food.
There was a couple break-ins to the hotels.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Just trying to get to stuff.
So between 1939 and 1945, Nazi Germany had invaded and occupied Poland, Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, Belgium, France, Yugoslavia, Greece, the Soviet Union, and North Africa.
It's a Spanish Empire list of area.
So with the exception of, and this will be found out during the trial, with the exception of, I believe, Austria and the Czech Republic, who signed essentially their agreement for the occupation, everybody else was, and that's not to say that in Austria atrocities weren't committed. Definitely in Czechoslovakia,
yes,
they were, perpetrated. But all of these other countries were actually invaded via attack. The first actual armed kickoff to World War II pretty much happened with the invasion of Poland.
After the false flag event of being fired on by them.
Oh, yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah. So our makeup is going to be, after we talk about these formal charges, you have to...
Oh, real quick, I just wanted to kind of list out what they're, not what they're on trial for, because you're getting into that, but essentially what the result of the war was. So it gives some scope to essentially what these guys were responsible for.
Love that.
So in the European theater, the best, estimate, because again, so many of them, it's hard to get an accurate account, about 55 million dead. 27 million of that 55 were in the Soviet Union, were Russian.
Piece of the pie.
Also included in that number are the around 6 million Jews that died as part of the Holocaust as a result of the Holocaust, not counting the number, I'm not sure, of people that would be considered, I don't want to say the word that they don't like to use.
The Romani people?
The Romani people, yes. And so anybody that they considered, what would it be?
Travelers.
Subhuman, but they had a name for it. I can't remember what it was. Untermensch or something like that. Anybody in those other countries, including, again, Austria and Czechoslovakia, were definitely war crimes committed.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So what are they going to be on trial for?
We line those out with those three. Crimes against peace, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and then you had the United States trying to sneak conspiracy in. Because conspiracy to commit a crime can be a much broader interpretation of a guilty person.
So the conspiracy they're referring to is that this wasn't a defensive action, as the claim was that, because we're going to get into, oh, no. We only went into Austria because, I mean, there were German people there. And then, as you can see, they signed over they signed over that we were allowed to do that. Czechoslovakia, yeah, I mean, they did the exact same thing. They wanted us in there. Poland, they have to fabricate a excuse for why they were the aggressors and actually attacked Poland. And at that point, because war was then declared on them, they were simply just being like, well, we were at war. So, I mean, we just thought we were invading anyone that was against us. I mean, they were all attacking us. So that's their big fucking argument.
You have to figure out conspiracy.
Correct. If this thing was premeditated. Yeah.
So if you have that charge of conspiracy, you can pretty much nail anybody. I mean, almost anybody that was involved in the planning of any invasion of any country.
You're trying to go back and being like, we want shit all the way back from the formation of this party or from when they first got in power. We don't want to just try them for shit that happened during the actual armed or the conflict part of the war. We want to get anyone we can that even had a hand in bringing this guy to power and making this happen.
Who committed the Reichstag fire? Yeah, I mean, if that's a conspiracy.
Kristallnacht, who was part of the Beer Hall Putsch that tried to, it's stuff going back there to build essentially a story and be like, well, you were part of this from the beginning.
You can get pretty much anybody on conspiracy charges, it feels like.
And they should have got.
Yes, absolutely. The judge and prosecution would be made up of all four allies. Robert E. Jackson was kind of made the lead prosecutor of the case. The president of the tribunal was a Brit named Sir Geoffrey Lawrence. Jeffrey, I think, but it's the Geoff version, which is...
Geoff.
Yeah, Geoff.
My name's Geoff.
French prosecutor was a guy named Francois de Methon.
So everybody had three, right? As I understood it. So each of the four countries had a primary judge who would be the one actually on the
tribunal.
They had a chief prosecutor who would be doing the questioning and cross-examinations, things like that. And then they had essentially an alternate or a backup,
assistant.
Right? Assistant, okay. Sorry. Primary judge, alternate judge.
The alternate judges weren't allowed to rule on anything.
No, I understand that. They only were there to serve, were the primary or the chief judge unable to perform the duties. They were just there as the backup. They didn't get to weigh in, like you're saying. They didn't get to make a verdict and everything.
They did get to weigh in as far as their opinions, but they weren't included in the verdict.
Their vote was not considered.
Yes, they could sit in there, though, and give them different interpretations.
Perspectives.
Of what
they took different notes. Exactly. They heard something different,
Francois had just overseen the trials in France of the leaders of the Vichy government. So you got a guy who is already hot from what happened in his own country.
And already has all the information that the Vichy government had.
Yep. So not too bad
this guy.
To have him there. All the Soviet reps were not permitted to make any decisions without being talked to by this commission that was back in Moscow. So
a commissar commission?
Yeah, you have judges who aren't allowed to make points unless they've run it through Moscow.
So when you say run it through Moscow, the trial is happening, and maybe you can answer this. The trial was recorded. I saw the disc audio recordings that they listened to. Was the trial televised live at the time, or was it just recorded and then shown later?
I think radio. You
Okay.
were able to, and
Because
I'm
there is
sure
footage, and that's just for essentially
Yeah,
documenting purposes.
not good footage, but there is footage.
I'm just wondering if the Soviets had, because during this trial, if you ever watch footage, everyone's wearing a headset because everyone is speaking a different language.
These are so cool. I'm so glad that you brought this up.
So everyone's wearing a headset. You have interpreters that are speaking all of the different languages. And as the American prosecutor is up there and he's questioning Hermann Goering, he's asking his questions. A few seconds behind, Goering is hearing it in German from the interpreter. So then he can go ahead and give his bullshit excuse or whatever it is. That's then, and it's not just Goering that's hearing it. The whole courtroom or whoever is privy to hear the information is also hearing the translations and everything, so they know what's going on. And then when Goering gives his answer again, that's disseminated out to everybody, and they just go back and forth like that.
Do you know how they did it?
How did they do it? Because I don't know.
It was called simultaneous interpretation. Basically, it was headphones that everybody wore, and you would have like a radio cassette kind of module that you would sit next to you. Mm-hmm. It had 4 settings on it. It had French, it had German, English, and Russian. You chose whatever you listened to. They had live translators that were sitting in boxes that had direct feeds to whoever was talking. Mm-hmm. And every single one of them would then translate like 3 or 4 words after what was being said. So
they got to be in like a soundproof box because one person's listening and translating in French. The next person is translating into Russian. The next person's translating into English.
So when you have a Russian judge speaking, you have all of these guys that have to know Russian.
You literally see everyone with just their hand up to their ear and their other hand with a pencil and just writing down. So anytime one person is speaking, no one's even really looking of knowing what's going on. They know who's up there and they're just looking down, making notes because all they're doing is hearing it through this headset.
Yeah, and there's points in time where the interpreters press a button and it gives a red light, which means that whoever was speaking has to start over because they either fumbled what they were saying or they couldn't catch up or the person was speaking just kind of not making any sense.
They're keeping tallies on who keeps fucking up.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, the Russian guy fucked up 3 times, the French guy fucked up 3. Just finding out whose red light's going on the fastest.
Well, and you can't blame any of these guys because if you're a judge and you're trying to make a point or a prosecutor, you're going to be talking real fast and you have to be able to hear that word, think of the translation in your own language, and then spit it out.
This is opening up a huge can of worms because what if the prosecutor up there is the American or English, they're speaking, they have their headset on so they can then hear what the other guy is going to be saying back to them. But then at the same time, what if the translation, because language doesn't always translate over exactly how you intend it.
Yeah.
What if like the French guy is giving a different word? And so the people that are listening in French are like, oh, why did he use that word? Or there's got to be some weird way that like you had to be so careful about what you said and so specific that there wouldn't be a miscommunication or misinterpretation of what you were trying to get across.
Goring uses that against Jackson quite a bit.
Yeah.
During their standoff. And it's so incredible to think 1945 you have, at its bones, it's a pretty simple thing to just have a radio transmission from a guy who's translating each one.
Had the war not happened, do they have that technology?
Maybe not.
I don't think so.
Probably not. But regardless, everybody has a headset on, no matter if you're in the press, whatever, and you're listening to whatever station you have. And just basically trying to get your stuff from there. Which, even if your guy's up speaking, even if Jackson's up speaking, all of the English-speaking press
journalists or anyone like
still
that
have to wear it for when Goring or whoever he's speaking to or one of the judges.
You're doing like I'm doing, one headphone, one can off, so you can hear what they're.
It's just a marvel. The way that they kind of broke things up was the Brits handled the indictments over any claims of aggressive war. Crimes against humanity on the Western Front were handled by France. Crimes on the Eastern Front were handled by the Soviets, obviously. The U.S. would outline kind of this overall Nazi conspiracy and then the criminality of some of these Nazi organizations. So not only are we having defendants, we're also having Nazi organizations being put on trial to be declared criminal, so
Things
then
like the
they can
SS,
be broken up.
the SD, like certain services within the military, like security divisions, things like that, to where all people working under that are technically under that umbrella.
Yeah. Then you have the Brits and the U.S. who work jointly on these conspiracy to wage aggressive war charges.
And I mean, that makes sense now that you break it down like that, because there's so much that happened on the Eastern Front. And frankly, it all happened to the Soviets. So at that point, they're like, you guys just figure out what you want to charge them with as far as that goes. France, they were occupying France that entire time. France, I feel like, because also once we liberated you, you guys were kind of helping us and everything. So you would be able to keep track. We also have our records, so we can go ahead and kick those over to you for what they did during battles, things like that. And then as far as the overarching aspect of it, having the United States, England, take the helm on that, that allows so much more information to be focused on and gathered, where you're not searching in 4 different bins to try to put together your case. You're like, oh no, these other 3 bins are being handled. We just get to work on, was this premeditated? Did they plan on doing all this?
Unless you're the Russians. Because the Russians ended up demanding corrections on the charges of crimes against peace regarding that little Molotov-Ribbentrop pact, that secret pact of non-aggression against each other, and the splitting up of Poland between the two after the pact was created. So, of course, the Russians are like, well, they committed crimes against peace because we had a non-aggression treaty. And they go, well, how'd you guys get that non-aggression treaty? Russians don't really want to talk about their carving off of Poland, because that makes them look bad if this was a crime against peace that the Germans invaded Poland.
Listen, what we were trying to do is we were trying to keep the Polish people safe from the Germans, and we totally requested all of Poland to try to, protect it and everything. But Germany insisted that they take half, and so we had to get as much Poland as we could to try to save as many Polish people as we could. It's complicated.
It's mighty brave of you. Why'd you do that? We signed a pact that they wouldn't come into our territory. So now we got to meet the defendants, and this is one hell of a list of defendants. We cannot talk about the Nuremberg Trials without talking about Hermann Göring. He was the commander-in-chief of the Luftwaffe. He was Hitler's sort of quasi-second in command.
For a long period of time, he was the one that, even in documentation signed by Hitler, was set up as his successor. That only changed, I think, within the last 6 months of the war.
When Göring tried to proclaim himself the leader because Hitler was off doing something else, Hitler ends up shutting that down in the letter, right? That he had written to him, kind of stating that he was taking over business, and that's how Donitz became in charge?
Well, what ended up happening is, so I think Goering, he fell out of favor. I'm not sure of the exact specifics. He falls out of favor with Hitler. Hitler basically is like, I'm stripping you of your successor, ship or whatever you want to call it. And he actually sent down, and he was apprehended. Goering was apprehended. He was then released by a Luftwaffe unit that actually came upon him and was able to get him out. And him and Hitler were at odds at the end of the war. Doesn't absolve him of anything. I'm just explaining the situation. When he essentially signed the document saying Goering is out, that's when he filled in and put Donitz was going to be the successor at that point.
Goering is he's going to have his own episode.
Did you watch the trailer for the movie?
No.
Okay, coincidentally enough, we had no idea that this movie was coming out. There's a movie called Nuremberg that I think November 7th. This episode will definitely be coming out before that, but this shit looks bananas. Rami Malek is in it as like an American prosecutor. It's got Russell Crowe as Hermann Goering. I'm trying to remember who else's names I sent you.
All I can think of
Michael Shannon is, I want to say sorry. Rami Malek is one of the psychologists that interviews and everything. And then, Michael Shannon is actually the lead American prosecutor. But it looks nuts.
Yeah.
It's like the back and forth cat and mouse game between the psychologist and Shannon and Goering.
Wow. That's going to be fun. Goering spent a lot of time with psychologists. This man's a very interesting guy. He was an ace, a beyond ace pilot, World War I for the Germans, a national hero, someone who was looked up to by everyone in Germany, who got injured pretty badly during the beer hall putsch.
Okay. World War I hero. Still famous in Germany.
Yep.
Everyone's pissed off at everyone but the Germans because they feel like they got shafted, so he's still national hero. Joins up with the Nazi party early, participates in the beer hall putsch, gets shot, gets addicted to morphine because of the gunshot wound, and then progressively throughout the rise of the Nazi party and the war, becomes out of shape, morphine-addled, and can't even fit inside a BF-109, as we discussed during the Battle of Britain episode.
He had to be pulled out of the plane.
And as the war goes on, and again, this information only kind of comes back due to the scope of being so far removed from the situation, but pretty much comes into this, I feel like, when he's captured, that...
Captured?
Oh, sorry. When he ends up surrendering himself to the Western Allies.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll talk about that here.
I know. What I'm getting at, when they got him, morphine addict, overweight, guy probably seemed a little bit nuts. He was also one of the guys that they were, golden goose that they were going after. The guy that they meet at the trial is a much different Goering.
Oh, yeah. He's back to World War I Goering.
Mm-hmm.
Goering turns himself in. And in turning himself in, he comes walking in with his wife and son. A baggage train that is carrying everything that Goring wants to bring with him.
He's wearing his powder blues, right?
Yes.
He's got to be. Is he holding the fucking scepter?
Probably.
Yeah.
It's Goering. I mean, he just showed up with a bunch of bags for
Guy's
prison.
high on morphine.
He's got a suitcase full of morphine that's supposed to hold him off until the trial. Like, that's how much he's planning this.
What do you mean you guys are taking this?
Don't you know who I am? And it actually ends up kind of working out because there has to be command that's sending down messages into the prison saying, stop taking pictures with Goring. We're seeing all of these soldiers that are giving Goring this treatment of being the star celebrity, and it's not a good look for us.
Mm-hmm.
These people are prisoners. We can't be looking like we're giving them special treatment because this is supposed to be a fair trial.
Yeah.
Rudolf Hess. Lot to say about this guy. He was Hitler's deputy. He was the one who flew to England in search of peace that Hitler wasn't looking for in 1941. And upon the English, I think he hit in like Edinburgh. He hit in Scotland somehow. I think he must have overshot England, or maybe it was planned that he was trying to get away from the fighting.
But who was the one that went up there to negotiate early on? Wasn't that Hess? And that's why he was held for so long?
Well, I thought he took the plane up there because he lands in the plane. They radio over to the Germans and say, did you send Hess over here? And the Germans say, we had no idea that he was coming. And then the British imprison him.
I'll look that up. The reason he was there.
Hess, during this whole entire lead up to the trial, is being evaluated by psychiatrists, just like all these guys are. They're taking IQ tests. They're making sure that their acuity is enough to be able to follow the trial. They want to make sure that they're mentally fit to stand trial, that you should always consider when you're having a fair trial. Hess started playing this fun memory game where he said that he didn't really remember a whole lot from 1938 to the current day because the trauma of being locked in jail for so long had sapped his memory.
He took it upon himself
to
go up there because he was worried about Barbarossa. He thought it was a bad idea to open a war on two fronts and attempted to try to bring Britain to the negotiating table. So
he's telling these psychologists, a guy that's flying up there to do that, probably a little crazy to begin with.
He got pushed out by Bormann, and he was worried that his role was being diminished and he wouldn't have any power at all. So, and he was also like, well, if we fight with the Soviets, we're end up losing. One of the guys with common sense apparently ends up flying up there. But again, he also served as Hitler's deputy throughout the entire, most of the rise. So he is definitely culpable in things that were planned. Because again, these things aren't just off the cuff things. They're things that are planned out that the Nazis are doing.
Conspiracy.
Yep.
This kind of fake amnesia. I shouldn't have buried it. This amnesia that has somehow beset Hess is drawing questions from the psychiatrist like, is this guy mentally fit to stand trial? And that becomes a big issue because if he's not, then you can't try him because there's a way to look at it in a completely different light where this becomes an unfair trial because he wasn't fit to stand trial. There was a man named Joachim von Ribbentrop, and his name might sound familiar from a couple minutes ago, was the foreign minister, former wine salesman that signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact of non-aggression between Russia, splitting Poland between the two of them. He did a lot of other things too. He was involved in some of the attacks that were going on. He had a few fingers in the pot of the camps that were happening. Invasions, he tended to be around some of them.
Well, with him kind of being this foreign minister, they used him to, help plan the invasions of both Poland and Russia. And he also was a participant in the final solution.
Yeah. Albert Speer, the Minister of Armaments and the architect of the Third Reich.
Architect of the Third Reich. Hitler liked the way he made buildings, so he was like, "Hey, man, why don't you take over the war economy?" And he fucking did the job.
Mine Russia needs to be built, or mine Germany needs to be built like a building. We need a strong foundation. We need strong beams to hold up a large roof. Albert Speer is a great architect. All of a sudden, he becomes pretty important. And again,
full-blown member of the Nazi Party. This guy's not doing this, under duress.
There's a lot of reasons that Chris is pointing out what pies his fingers are in, because it comes into play when we start hearing witness testimony. Alfred Rosenberg. Guy's a mystery. I didn't look this fact up because I didn't really want the answer to it. If you guys want the answer, I'm sure you can Google it. Alfred Rosenberg. Rosenberg's a fairly Jewish last name, I believe. It definitely could be German. It's very sad if it was, or if he was the Minister of Occupied Eastern Territories. He was an author that basically wrote a book similar to Mein Kampf before Mein Kampf came out.
Oh, yeah. It was like this insane promotion of all these fucking racist ideologies.
Yeah, just a very large anti-Semite who was someone who Hitler looked upon as a visionary.
He was not Jewish.
Okay, good. Wilhelm Keitel, Chief of Staff, German Armed Forces. Probably a pretty big deal here, right? This guy is
You're literally commanding the armies to march into these fucking countries and kill people.
Yeah, and not only kill the people that you're fighting, but just massacre villages and pretty much anywhere around there.
Yeah, you have your hand in the doctrine in which you're fighting in these certain areas. And it's not just like the Nazis are like, we have this overarching doctrine for how things are going to be done. They have different ways of fighting. And what I mean by fighting is they have different methods, essentially, of fighting what's allowed on the Eastern Front are vastly more brutal than they are on the Western Front. So there's different types of like doctrines. There's like the way to fight in Russia. There's the way to fight in France. There's the way to fight against England.
You also, I'm sure, have Keitel being passed down the knowledge of they're the ones that clear out the forces, and then the SA death squads come in afterwards. And
to tell them, hey, also when you move through these areas, make sure you start to partition off certain neighborhoods that might be of a certain persuasion. Have the army wait there until the SS gets there.
This guy he'd be my bitch if I was a prosecutor. Ernst Kaltenbrunner. Ernst was second in command for the SS, for the SD, and for the SA.
So yeah, he was the head Reichsmarshal, whatever you want to fucking call it, of the security office. And so yeah, SS, and then also the local law enforcement, right?
Local law enforcement, SS. I believe it was the SA that was the information wing, and then the SD were the squads.
Okay.
He also did a lot of traveling to a lot of different camps, apparently, around Austria and Germany. And
the SS had their hands in essentially providing a lot of the security in those places, right?
Yeah, and you have Kaltenbrunner, whose face just continues to show up from
your name's on a lot of these sign-in books.
Yeah, and a lot of the orders that are handed down, he even
bear his signature.
Yeah, he's witnessed to have taken care of some things himself. Wilhelm Frick was the former interior minister who was more of the governmental side of things. He was making sure that the Nazi Party was coming to power. He was handling a lot of the day-to-day things as far as within the government. Not to say that he wasn't participating in the military actions.
But again, this is now you're seeing it branch.
Yeah, there's an opening of these defendants. Hans Frank was the governor general of German-occupied Poland. So now we have these guys who are
The Butcher of Poland, I want to say they called him. I don't think I'm making that up. I read that. Hold on.
Yeah, you have these governor generals that are trying to basically cleanse their hands of things by saying, well, I was just the governor. I was being told what to do. I was basically a puppet regime inside of Poland. So anything that I was ordered to do and pass that on to the people under my command.
Going to be a lot of that.
Yeah, not really my fault. I believe Frank also turned over a bunch of different journals that he had while he was the governor general of Poland, basically trying to prove that he had a change of heart while he was there. But again, if you have a change of heart, you are in that position, you still have a choice.
Motherfucker, you see the writing on the wall and you have someone start writing shit down. And what's to say that 3 months before all this goes down, he just doesn't go through and start fabricating shit in this about like, oh no, I started feeling like this like 4 years ago.
Yeah. A lot of Dear Diaries. Julius Streicher, maybe the most interesting guy in this whole entire thing. He was the editor of an anti-Semitic newspaper called Der Stürmer. Anti-Semitic is kind of part of it. Apparently he was a crazy porn addict, and they said when they raided Streicher's house, they found just mounds of porn that the soldiers would actually break into Streicher's house multiple times to just keep stealing this stuff.
I hate to interrupt porn talk, but yeah, Butcher of Poland.
That's not a fun way to interrupt porn talk. They said that the newspaper, or Der Stürmer, was basically like 60% anti-Semitic rhetoric, 20% porn, and then 20% anti-Semitic porn. And this guy was just a psycho. And enough so that Goering, when he was being interviewed about the other people that he knew on trial, said that he thought that Streicher was a vile man, and he only read one article in Streicher's newspaper and banned it from his house to make sure that it was never seen.
Yeah, it was like the most propaganda images of, you know, Jews that you could see, the huge noses making them seem like fucking gremlins and shit like that. There was talk about how if like a German woman lay with a Jew, like her blood is tainted for like so many generations or all this kind of shit. And motherfucker gets up there and has the balls to be like, oh, no. And this is a quote during it. He did not intend to agitate or inflame anti-Semitism, but to enlighten. And I think one of the prosecutors was like, listed off all the kind of stuff. And he's like, I want you to explain to me how that's enlightenment.
Because you're letting people know this is what you think they do. You're trying to protect them from just these fake things that you're coming up with in your head.
Mm-hmm.
On a brighter note for Streicher, he was not the most loved person inside the jail, because every morning Streicher would get out of bed, strip down naked, and he would start stretching and doing his calisthenics in front of all the other prisoners. Just really making life hard for these guys. And I'm just going to be straight from this point. I probably could have done it earlier. I don't really care how this ends. Had they not had a trial and just killed these guys, wouldn't hear an argument from me. Is a guy who doesn't believe in capital punishment really, unless there's special exceptions. Mm-hmm. I didn't need it, but at the same time, I understand why they did it.
I had so many torture fantasies this week. And not in the sense of like fantasies about what these motherfuckers did, but what I would love to do with these guys.
Streicher had a Jewish guard who had lived through a prison camp and escaped to England, eventually over to the United States, joined up with the army, and came back over. And being the guard that was tasked with guarding Streicher and the prison inmates, he would wait till Streicher fell asleep, and he would sneak into his cell, and he would just piss all over him.
Good.
Streicher lived on water from the toilet in his cell and piss-soaked potato skins for, I believe it was a matter of like 1 or 2 weeks. Not how you're supposed to treat a prisoner in really any respect. At the same time, this guy was in a prison camp where they were fed potato peels and kept alive on the water that they could find in puddles at the camp. So maybe the Streicher abuse was a learned response that he gained from being treated that way by things that Streicher had put into the world against Jews.
I see no problem with this.
Yeah, this is a very circular thing to where I can't really blame him.
The only, and I'm sure everyone listening to this knows this, the only sympathetic, emotions we're going to have during this are when we talk about the victims.
Yeah.
There is not a redeeming fucking quality within any of these assholes that we're discussing here.
No.
That's why it's been an angry week.
Yeah, there's no positive side on one side of this at all.
All right, who's the next douchebag?
Alfred Jodl. And Jodl was Hitler's personal military aide. So again, if you're a personal military aide to Hitler, you're the first person that is being passed these commands from Hitler that then you're disseminating out to everybody else.
Chief of Operational Staff of the Wehrmacht.
Pretty big deal. You're going to be handing over a lot of kill plans and just everything bad that the German military does passes through your hands.
Yeah.
We have Fritz Sockel. Sockel was a Nazi party leader. He was an official that was involved in quite a bit of forced labor.
Yeah, he actually managed like some of the forced labor programs.
Just not a...
Sorry, that's the nice way of saying it. It's slave labor.
Yeah, that's what kind of caught me up there. Is forced labor makes it sound like
I heard forced labor so many times doing the research. They don't, but it's slave labor.
Slavery. Arthur Seyss in Cart. This guy doesn't play a huge role. He was an Austrian Nazi who helped rule the occupied Netherlands. Baldur von Streichel was the head of the Hitler Youth. Fuck this guy. Awful human being. And
I'm going down my list. Who's this?
Baldur von Schreich.
Okay.
Schreich. He actually comes out at the trial closing statements and says that he feels a personal shame for the words that he passed down to the youth of Germany because he realized that Hitler was a fraud. Could have realized that a lot sooner. You could have been the voice of reason to say, hey, maybe we don't need to continually brainwash kids about people that we hold up as heroes.
I mean, he's dead at that point. But again, not an excuse.
Yeah. Well, if he's the head of Hitler Youth, you have to know at some certain point what he's doing because he's the one that's writing the propaganda for you to give to the children.
Yeah.
You have to realize that he's a fraud at some point.
Yeah, as soon as he mentions something anti-Hitler, one of those kids is going to be like, oh, no, and go tell his dad. But at the same time, I don't care what happens to this person.
No.
This is the rational part of my brain be like, fuck.
Karl Donitz, he was the Grand Admiral, the commander of the German Navy. He is also the man who signs the surrender, correct?
Yeah, so he's the one that essentially, once Hitler killed himself, he was made the head of state.
And Donitz gives himself a very important distinction as far as being a Grand Admiral and the commander of the German Navy, saying that since they were offshore, he didn't really have the whole I hate Jews thing going on, and that he tried to keep the Navy as integrated as possible. He really wasn't involved in much of the stuff that was going on.
You weren't just constantly at your base on the mainland, heading back and forth to fucking Berlin to do fucking parties and shit. Fuck you.
Yeah, just a real hands-off approach. Enough so that somehow Hitler decided to make him
I was on a
the guy.
submarine the whole time. Yeah. I just spent my whole time on a U-boat.
You're one of the first names out of Hitler's mouth when he was talking about replacements. I think you probably were more involved than you're saying. Erich Raeder was the commander-in-chief of the Navy prior to Donitz. He stays alive, and this is kind of an interesting thing because you have Donitz and then you have Raeder. We've talked so much about these guys having an understanding of if something was just morally wrong, you could say no. You weren't going to be killed all the time. In very rare cases, if you turned down a direct command, were you going to be killed in the German military? you were probably going to be demoted. You were probably going to end up in a very shit position.
Depends on how high Hitler was that day.
Yeah, and that's really what it depends on. And not to mention some of these things, if you're denying these orders, aren't making it back up to Hitler that you denied it. They're going far up enough the chain to get somebody that doesn't really care. That's just like, okay, he's not going to do it. We're just going to demote him. It's not that big of a deal. So you have enough options in the German military and in these political spheres and in the financial sector that you can say no. If you know something's wrong, you're not going to get killed for it.
Or if you know you're going to have to say no, get the fuck out.
Yeah.
You're telling me that the Grand Admiral couldn't fucking grab a ship and be like, all right, boys, we're heading in to run up the fucking white flag.
Yep. First English vessel we see, we're just calling it.
Mm-hmm.
There's always options. Walter Funk was the president of the German National Bank. Now we're reaching into this financial sector because these guys were the ones that were the bank for Hitler.
He didn't just run the bank, dude. He was the Reich Minister of the Economy from 38 to 45. He was the financial guy.
Yeah. He was the man that was keeping the books. He saw where all the money was being sent. He knew about the forced labor that was being used.
He saw where money was coming in from or stolen goods and all that stuff that was being turned into some type of, trading it or I don't know. But he saw that shit.
Yeah. And there's a lot of these guys that we're literally just going to bring up now and never mention again. Konstantin von Neurath was the former foreign minister and the Reich protector of Bohemia and Moravia. Don't know what the hell Moravia was, probably over by Bohemia, but is the Reich protector. He's the one that's putting down all of the efforts to try to, on the underground, the people that are working within the country.
He's the governor, basically.
Support the Allies. Yeah, being a former foreign minister, you're going out and surveying the battlefields and seeing all this stuff. You're just in on it. Hjalmar Stock was the Minister of Economics and the President of the Reichsbank, which eventually, after you don't need the National Bank anymore and you're just a Nazi entity, you need your own bank.
Yeah.
You're not keeping your money just within Germany. You want to make sure that you have full access to that all the time by creating your own bank. Franz von Papen. This guy's interesting to me. He's a key political figure. He helps bring Hitler to power. He tries to play up the fact that he wasn't in Hitler's favor the entire time that the Nazi Party was involved. I believe von Papen was arrested at one point in time, but he was the guy that helps usher in Hitler coming to power.
Yep.
So his role, although earlier on in the war, led to the Nazi war machine running loose all over all over the European continent. It's a pretty big part. Hans Fritzl was the chief of the Reich's main bureau of the Nazi Party. He was also a radio host.
Yeah, he's minister, broadcast and propaganda.
Pretty interesting that you're going after a guy who just claims that he's a lowly radio host. I mean, what could he have done? How is he on trial with all these other guys? He's not the main guy.
He was basically, he ran kind of national radio.
Yeah.
So everyone's hearing it. But think of it in the same sense of where you had that one dude that had Der Stürmer, Julius Streicher or whatever. He's basically the fucking DJ version of this guy.
Yeah. So he's pushing out just as much propaganda. He knows that this stuff is lies. He's still pushing it out.
Probably even more so.
Yeah.
Radio's going to get a lot further than certain magazines and shit.
Yep. A gentleman named Robert Ley was the head of the German Labor Front. So as Hitler comes to power...
Very non-German name.
Yeah. Yeah, very non-German. L-E-Y. I don't know if that makes it any more German or Germanic. As the head of the German Labor Front, as Hitler's coming to power as this National Socialist, because that sounds great to all the labor.
Depending on where we are, we'll capitalize or emphasize a name.
Yep. I'm going to be a champion for all these unions. They're all going to get fair jobs. Nazis come to power. German Labor Front is the only labor union that there is. And when there's only one labor union...
There is no labor union.
Yep, they're going to feed you to wherever they want you to go. Robert Lay didn't even make it to trial. He got pretty fed up and kind of saw the writing on the wall saying, what good is a trial going to do? They're going to kill us all anyway. I'm not positive how he ended up killing himself. I believe it was cyanide, but he's in custody, so it's weird that he would have had cyanide laying around.
Yeah.
It could have been some sort of an overdose. I'm not really sure, but he ends up... Oh, I forgot. Do you want to know?
Yeah.
Robert Lay took 2 towels, soaked them in his toilet, wrapped them around his neck, and then pulled his own body weight and head down as they were wrapped around the toilet and choked himself. And this becomes a massive issue because they're already bare bones on what they're allowed to have. Mm-hmm. So then you start going without things like showers or having a towel or anything like that in your thing. I mean, and again, this is where I have to draw the line because I'm right there with you. I don't give a fuck what these guys have. Have everything, have nothing. It doesn't matter. You're going to die. I don't think you probably needed a trial.
I want them to have nothing.
But at the same time, we have to be the beacon of equality doing these trials.
Hand them a towel during the fucking shower and make them hand it to you when they walk in the cell. They don't need to have fucking towels in their cells.
Yeah, I don't disagree. A gentleman named Gustav Krupp, who was a bedridden industrialist. Bedridden industrialist isn't a form of industry. He was a guy who had heavy arms factories and a few other things in Germany.
Industry covers a lot of shit, especially when it's a war industry.
Yep.
Yeah, the chairman of the Reich Association of Industry.
1941, he is stricken with old age and is bedridden from 41 to 45. He goes on trial as basically somebody who's clinging to life. So it's going to be hard to prosecute him. And not only that, if he's being charged from 38 to 41, we have a whole lot of other arms and things that are being built up. But how do you question a guy who can't even speak and is on life support? Like, there's not a whole lot you can do.
Well, how does a guy like that run a business?
His son.
There you go.
Alfred. This is where we get into the interesting part of how fair this trial has to be, is the prosecutors wanted to take Gustav off and go capture Alfred and put him on trial. The judges in the tribunal said, you filed charges against this guy. Either you try him or you acquit him and don't try him.
Yeah.
Those are your only 2 options. You're not just plugging and playing these different guys. You brought these charges against this guy. Either you drop him or you try him.
And now you got to go find the other guy, build up a case against him, make sure it's tight, and then try it again. Like, are you going to, again, world stage, there's got to be something happening here. The more people that you can, the better it's going to look.
Yeah, but you're also setting a precedent. If you bring charges against somebody, you can't use what their son did afterwards to convict them. Okay. You have to have proof of what they did.
The individual crimes of each individual,
And we also, finally, the 25th man, Martin Bormann. The reason he's the 25th man is because he ends up being tried in absentia. He was the private secretary of Hitler, which, again, oh my God. Hitler's private secretary? Mm-hmm. You could get this guy on trial? That sounds awesome. Bormann was dead.
Yeah. He was dead, I think, when the Soviets were invading the city. He went and hung himself. Or no, I think he might have got caught. Wait, I don't really know if he's going to hang himself off a bridge. I think he might have got caught and then hung off the bridge. I'm hoping he did.
Yeah, but either way.
They don't know about it because his body disappeared.
Yeah. And I believe they ended up finding a body at some point in time that they believed to be Bormann.
In like 87.
Yeah.
They did a DNA test and found out it was Bormann.
But it's interesting because he's the one guy that's tried absentia, which is the reason it's interesting is because, yes, he is the private secretary of Hitler and more important, but we also have all these other guys that were very important members of the Nazi Party that escaped to South America that we didn't know if they were dead or alive either. Why weren't we trying them absentia as well?
There's a whole list of names of people they're still hunting.
Yeah. So it's interesting that he's the only guy that gets hung up on that.
Okay, we've named the people. We got to take a bathroom break.
Go.
Oh my God, Adam. What is that up in the sky? It's a bird.
It's a plane.
It's socials. Oh my God. It's faster than Instagram.
That's historically high pod on Instagram.
More powerful than X?
It's historically high, historically HI on X.
Able to leap tall threads in a single bound.
Back to historically high pod on Threads.
And I mean, I guess there's still Gmail, right?
We got that too. That is historicallyhighpodcast@gmail.com.
All right, guys, back to the show. Okay, so we know the players. So now let's get to essentially kind of what they're going to be brought against them. Is that where we're at?
Yeah, and as you astutely pointed out earlier, 3 institutions of defendants made clear that the reach of the Nazi Party. I mean, you have the Nazi Party as a political entity, then you have the economics factor, and then you have military defendants. You have guys that are defendants they're all going to be tried under their own stuff. Mm-hmm. Everybody has to be proven this way. But can you imagine the Nazi Party being so big that you're sitting there and you were a military guy and you're looking across, you're like, I've never seen that guy before.
Yeah.
I don't know that guy. That guy was in an institution. I got a letter from this guy one time, and that's the only reason I know him.
But then at the same time, if you have knowledge, because we're going to see people kind of like start to turn and name other people that are literally on trial here. Goering at one point has to be put kind of in a solitary confinement type thing because he's trying to influence, even in the docket, even where they're sitting, he's trying to like influence and talk. There's a guy he sits next to, I can't remember who it was, but the guy's like panicking and freaking out, and you could see Goering like, fucking keep your shit together. So he's trying to also influence to make sure that none of these guys are naming primarily him in a lot of this shit too.
Well, maybe it was a strategy of Goering during this time, but he kind of tells the guys like, hey, look to me for support here. I'm going to be able to pull us all out of this.
Technically, I was going to be in charge of this whole thing.
Yeah. So he's kind of trying to take that leader role.
If you're loyal to Germany, you're loyal to me.
The defendants list is finalized August 29th, 1945. You have 24 indicted, with Bormann being in absentia. Krupp is drooling and too ill. Lay commits suicide, so our trial is only going to start with 21 people standing for trial. Defense attorneys, I think I might have said 25 earlier. I think it's only 24.
So it was 25 that started, and then the 3 got knocked out.
So,
and then it was 22.
Because technically Bormann was still
correct
in absentia. Yeah. Okay. Defense attorneys. The hell are you finding defense attorneys for a bunch of Nazis?
These are the guys that they've had, or lawyers that were within Germany that are not named as this, so they have nothing as far as like culpability in this, I guess. But at the same time, again, this is just somebody that is still, if it's a Nazi party member that happens to be a lawyer, but did not commit anything, just ran their business, that person still views it as, hey, we should have won this war. Yep. These guys are also hearing this and seeing evidence about this stuff for the first time. And you got to imagine there's got to be some of these guys, even from Germany, that are these lawyers, that once this evidence gets kind of brought across and saying, well, we have this, they got to be watching this being like, you fucking did that? You would hope, just from a humanity standpoint, that if they didn't know legitimately these lawyers or these defenders, that they're just like, how the fuck? I'm not defending you anymore.
They were all Nazis too. You got Nazis defending Nazis.
I know, man. I'm looking for humanity in this thing. I'm looking for a humanity in an inhumane place.
And supposedly these guys were actually fairly decent attorneys. Part of the reason they were fairly decent attorneys was because all of the bombings and everything that happened and the fallout from the war had basically dried up all the booze around them, and they were able to kind of fix their alcoholism, as Goring was able to fix or kick his morphine habit while he was in jail. Mm-hmm. So you have Nazis defending Nazis because nobody else was going to step up and be a defense attorney. At the same time, all these defense attorneys were approved by the tribunal. So they were given a pass as far as these guys are competent enough to defend these guys.
Correct, but at the same time, knowing that they have such overwhelming evidence that it's not going to matter. Yeah. In fact, it's going to look even better when you beat someone that's supposed to be adequate or better at their job. But there's just so much compelling evidence and factual information that it renders their abilities completely moot.
And judging by what we have as the defense, I will say that they're a little bit more than half lit. general attack for an attorney is if none of the evidence is in your favor, you attack the institution. I mean,
And that's all they had, though.
yeah, that's not what a defense attorney should do, but a smart person, if you can't defend your client, you're going to go on the offensive about everything else around why your client is there to try to discredit anybody that's saying ill of your client.
So they're going to be tried on 4 different counts. Again, I kind of think we went through these: conspiracy, crimes against peace, war crimes, and crimes against humanity.
And then conspiracy.
Yeah. There is about 43 pages of charges, and they're using really fine print. So there are a lot of charges. And again, they're only bringing charges against them that they have evidence to actually back them up to convict them on. Do you have anything before going through just kind of some of the things they might present?
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing the Nazi defense attorneys did was jointly appeal to the court, claiming that they had no jurisdiction. So, right out of the gate, before the trial even starts, they file an appeal saying, you don't have the jurisdiction to charge any of our clients. We need this thrown out. What's the tribunal going to do?
Oh, man.
You got us. We would have figured this out if it wasn't for you clever Nazis. Like, come on, guys.
They just walk them out the front door, and they're just like, do you see all of the Allied MPs and military around here? Okay, we're going to forget you mentioned that whole jurisdiction thing.
Yeah, or they just...
Unless you want us looking into your records, too, because we've only had 6 months to do this. I'm sure we could find some stuff with, an unlimited amount of time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The 6 organizations that were going to be tried included the Reich Cabinet, the leadership corps of the Nazi Party, the Gestapo, the SA, the SS, the SD. We talked about those earlier.
These
Secret
guys can
police.
S my D.
Huh?
I said these guys can S my D.
Yes, they can. The general staff and then the high command of the Wehrmacht. Clearly, that's a criminal organization that needs to be handled.
Yeah, you only terror bombed London and a bunch of other places.
Our trial will begin November 20th, 1945. The charges are levied. All the defendants, of course, not guilty. You're going to enter your plea. They classify this as not guilty in a variety of weird ways that I listened to that really had no point, but it's kind of the first chance for the defense or for the defendants to grandstand.
It's fucking Nazi solidarity.
Yeah, to say...
because if one's guilty and it ties to this one, it ties to this one.
Well, I declare myself not guilty, and by saying not guilty, I mean I'm not guilty for myself, but I'm not guilty for the people of Germany. You're trying to appeal to the crowd. And unfortunately, the crowd...
It's not a home crowd, man. It's a home game, but it's not a home crowd.
But if you get that little blurb in the newspaper, and by some chance you get out of this alive, or you can die a martyr and have your name in the papers as the guy that went down fighting for Germany.
Can fuck these Nazis.
Yeah, I'm trying to lay out both sides. After this ends up happening and you get everything starting, the 3 aims of the trial were basically to convict criminals, condemn these organizations without condemning the Germans as a whole, which is a huge thing that they figured out didn't work after World War I.
I need someone to review the Treaty of Versailles and see what went wrong with this thing. So yeah, targeting specific institutions that were tied to the Nazi Party. They're dismantling the whole thing is what they're saying.
I think the number one thing for me is to document the irrefutable evidence of Nazi crimes. This is, as Chris said earlier, center stage for them to present the atrocities that were committed by the Nazis on record, so this can't be refuted. People can't say, well, we didn't know about this.
In no other place will you be able to, except at this point, Wikipedia and the internet, were you able to present all of this information where you knew that because everyone was watching, they would reach the maximum amount of people.
Yeah. In a legal proceeding.
Yep.
So this is all...
You knew it was well-vetted information. You knew it was legitimate. And you got to basically watch the, at that point, most hated people that were still alive get their comeuppance.
Yeah. And of course, in a smart way, the defense immediately will claim when they get their turn that the prosecution is trying to promote this collective German guilt. I mean, yeah. That's your way out of this, is you're trying to put the trial on trial. Observers
There
noted
needs
that
to be a little guilt. You guys just did this for the second time in like 20 years.
yeah, well, and they're also, excuse me, what did they call it? It was winners, some sort of winner's power or victorious. I don't remember.
Were they saying that because they were the winning side, they were able to go and take advantage of the situation?
Maybe it was victor's justice is the term that they used, as far as we won, we're going to rub it in. And observers would end up noting that evidence presented convinced some of them that the Germans must have been aware of the crimes that were committed. And again, I'm on the side. You and I have talked about it numerous times. I believe that the German public was more aware of what was going on than I think.
At the very least, in a very large area surrounding the places where these things were happening.
Yeah.
It'd be hard to blame the farmer that was down in fucking Bavaria where word never reached or anything like that never saw anything. But at the same time, then you got to say, well, what's the range from one of these concentration camps? Because guess what? You knew that something was happening here. You saw the trains coming in.
Yeah, who doesn't have a family member that's working security there, or that's
someone
a
comes
train
into
conductor.
Town. Yeah, some of the troops get to go into town or something like that. They're sitting there drinking, talking about all the fucking horrible shit they're doing.
Yeah, they had to have known more. And we'll kind of get to where maybe the Germans as a whole get laid blame from. And, of course, it's probably where you're thinking that it's going to come from, just based upon the blitz through France.
Mm-hmm.
November 21st, Jackson gives this hours-long opening speech for the prosecution. He said that it lands. Jackson was a member of the Supreme Court back in the United States.
Was he Attorney General?
I don't know about Attorney General. I know he's on the Supreme Court.
The judge might have been an Attorney
Possibly.
General.
Also, the interesting thing about Jackson, he never finished law school, and he was on the Supreme Court of the United States. I don't know how that works.
He's that fucking good. He's like Doogie Howser. Dude.
Yeah, potentially that could have been it.
I think Doogie still had to attend medical school, though.
On the 29th, this is, I think, something that Chris and I both came to a conclusion on our own, that to understand kind of the tone in the courtroom, we had to just dig into what they saw. On the 29th, they showed a 57-minute and 53-second film. And the reason that I say that is because I watched every minute, I watched every second to try to feel what they could have felt when they saw this. And you watched the whole thing too.
Yeah.
It was compiled footage of liberation of the Nazi concentration camps.
But then not just liberation. It was compiled from footage that they had taken from concentration camps that showed essentially how bodies were disposed of. It showed executions. It's really fucking, I don't have to even state that it should be difficult to watch and everything, but I don't know if our just collective senses have been dulled by movies that show this kind of stuff. And so part of our brain tricks ourselves for a comfort thing to thinking it's not real.
Yeah.
But when you're watching this and you really focus on the fact that this happened and these are real people, and you see just fucking walking skeletons and piles of bodies and these pits dug by these bulldozers just so they can bury fucking 2,000 bodies at a time, and it shows you the fucking gas chambers in the rooms. I don't know someone that can watch that. And first of all, fuck Holocaust deniers. But the fact that someone can watch that and not just feel a visceral reaction would be pretty astounding to me.
Well, and to just see the looks on faces.
They showed footage of, it was like a table that had effects on it that they had taken from like the offices. There was a fucking lamp that was made of human skin that an SS officer had made because his wife requested it.
They're going to get an episode too. The two very nasty people. She was it wasn't the Witch of Warsaw, but she was a pretty bad lady. On that same table, they had shrunken heads.
They brought that into the court.
Yeah. They had filleted sections of skin that had tattoos that the Jewish people had on their bodies that were deemed beautiful art by these Germans. And instead of killing them in any other ways. They killed them in ways to be able to preserve those pieces that were just hung as art. And these concentration camps didn't just happen out in the middle of nowhere. There were towns and areas where they actually went into town after they liberated these camps and brought the people inside to show them exactly what went on there. It's so odd watching that old footage because you see guys in like 3-piece suits and you see women that are dressed up and they have these fancy hats on and they have their bags and their gloves.
That was in an episode of Band of Brothers. They brought in people from the town and you like women wearing like their jackets and like heeled shoes and everything like that are having to lift up and move these bodies and everything. And the soldiers are just looking at them being like, you fucking knew. You had an idea and you fucking turned a blind eye. And I'm not, again, this isn't a condemnation of everybody in Germany at the time, but especially in those circumstances where they were so close to that for such a long period of time, it defies belief to think that they didn't know what was happening there. One of the things that they brought up too kind of early on, and I think it was when, I'm not exactly sure how the process of the trial went, but I know that, again, they went in order. The defendants were called up at some point, but
it was when the defense's time to refute the prosecution's allegations.
As far as the conspiracy side of it, kind of starting in order leading up through the atrocities of the war that we're going to talk about, one of the things that they found was this thing called the Hossbach document. And basically, this was something that was written back in 1935. There was evidence that it was either signed by, high leadership or was attended during the meeting in which this was all kind of formulated. Back in 1937, that basically supported the Nazi goal that it was making war for land. And it established that goal very early back in 37.
Lebensraum?
Living space, Lebensraum or whatever it's called. Yeah. There was also, they had to kind of take it piece by piece as how the war progressed. And so, first of all, they're looking at Austria. They're like, let's look at the Austrian situation, kind of find out what happened there. And through, all of this information coming in, basically they brought in the Chancellor of Austria and they're like, hey, we're right at the door, man. And either you signed the papers letting us in and letting us kind of do our thing there and considering you an annexation of Germany, or we're going to come take it by force. We already had the excuse because there's some German people there. And so the guy was like, I kind of don't have a choice. I'm going to go ahead and sign it. And then he also resigned as the chancellor. You had the same circumstances when it came to Czechoslovakia. They actually brought the Czech leader all the way to Berlin and brought him into a meeting room with all the, Hitler, Goering, I'm sure fucking Himmler, Goebbels, some other higher ups were there, and basically told him like, you know what? And I think Goering is the one that said it. He's like, I would really hate to bomb Prague unless I had to. He's like, I would really hate to reduce Prague to the ground. It's such a beautiful city. And so, knowing that he's wanting to spare his people from any unnecessary death and the fact that he's completely unprepared for this, he ends up also signing off on the occupation as well. And so that kind of leads up to their like, well, fuck, I mean, they signed off on it, but at the same time, now we have the reason that you coerced these people, that you threatened them. So that's already going against you right there.
Yeah.
And then we essentially come to, like you alluded to earlier, the Poland invasion, which if you're looking who Germany first invaded, it's going to pull up Poland. It's not Poland. It's Austria, it's Czechoslovakia, but then it's Poland because Poland was like, fuck you. We're not allowing you in here willingly. And in order to invade Poland, what did the Germans do?
False flag event. Didn't they send over troops that were in Polish uniforms?
They weren't troops, buddy.
They were just actors?
POWs.
Oh, no.
So the Nazis forced POWs.
How'd they have POWs at that point, though? If technically they didn't invade those other countries.
Within their own country, my man. There were people that, buddy, like, remember when the rise to power and they were opposing political parties and all that kind of stuff?
Okay, they were political POWs.
They might have been people that were loyal militarily to a different party or something like that. Like,
yeah, those are just political prisoners because it technically wasn't a war.
Correct. So they end up dressing these POWs up in these Polish uniforms that they're able to acquire, and they send them in to attack this across the border, to attack a radar station or like an antenna for a radio station, something like that, that just so happened to be manned with German troops, of course. Surprise, surprise. None of the people that attacked the POWs that were posing as the Polish troops, none of them survived. They were killed. And this is admitted in the Nuremberg trials when they're discussing this. He says, how did you solve? I'm wanting to say, how did the prosecutor, he's like, how did you either dispose of or keep them from providing any information? He's like, how did the German fucking put it, the Nazi put it? He's like, it wasn't liquidate because that's a term that they use very often during the Holocaust, but we like terminated them or something like that.
Christ.
And he's like, by terminate, you mean kill? He's like, yes, I mean kill.
Liquidate.
So come to find out, this whole reason that they were trying to peddle off to the international community about why they were invading Poland is because they were attacked first when, like you said, false flag operation. So this comes to light as well. So now you also have anybody, and these pieces of evidence are meant to be almost like a blanket. They're supposed to encompass multiple peoples. This is what they're trying to do. They're not just like, we're going to get Goering on these 3 things. We're going to get this guy. They know their focal points of what they want to get them on. But anything that they can tie them to, invasion of Poland, Goering, you're the head of the Wehrmacht. You guys were in there first bombing all this shit. They're tying everybody who had a hand in it to these specific events.
Well, and it's 100% necessary because even after the odd thing that was like my little slice of humanity in this was after they had shown those liberation of Nazi camps, they said that all of the defendants were just in shock. Like, this was kind of their reckoning of understanding what the Holocaust actually was, because for a lot of these guys, these were just numbers on a sheet. These weren't actual people.
They saw terms. They maybe knew location of camps. They had to have some idea. Here's the thing. I think they were shocked to having to fucking see it.
Yeah.
They were shocked that they had to then go back and think about all the times that rolled across their desk or they heard about something in a conversation. They just passed it off in their fucking heads as it's not as bad as I'm thinking. This is for the greater good of Germany or whatever the fuck they want to tell themselves. But then having to witness this and also knowing that they're not witnessing this in private. They're not able to deal with this just internally. Everybody is fucking knowing them for what they are throughout the world and what they were complicit in doing.
There were reports that Speer was actually seen with his hands over his eyes, potentially wiping tears away as they were watching the video.
His fucking eyes.
I mean, I almost had him watching that video, same thing that they
100%,
watched.
Man.
And I wasn't culpable in any of it. It was just me being sad.
I was watching that and I was doing some work and I literally just found myself staring at my computer screen, just zoned out for a solid 15 minutes after seeing certain parts of it and just being like, what am I seeing? Like, how do I process this?
Yeah. So you have kind of this reckoning even for them of what's to come. The stream of evidence further documents these atrocities that were committed by the Nazis. That becomes the issue, though, is this evidence that's being presented at this point in time is just documenting the atrocities by the blanket Nazis. So you have the judges that are sitting on the tribunal that are asking what the relevance is towards the individuals that are on trial. Because you have to prove...
What are the ties?
Yeah, you have to prove it. And then the witnesses come. And as the witnesses come in, the first are former Nazis, then followed by concentration camp survivors. I don't know which is going to be worse. I know on an individual level, these former Nazis are going to be a whole hell of a lot worse for the defendants.
Wait, you think the former Nazis are going to be worse?
Mm-hmm. Because
as a whole, I guess.
If you're trying to point to individuals that had culpability in certain things, if you have other Nazis that are coming to the stand, they're going to be able to point to you and be like, you were there for that. I remember you.
I think I'm misunderstanding. Worse from a legal sense.
Oh, yeah. Well, and just worse for the witnesses. The concentration camp survivors are going to hang the whole of the Nazis.
Correct. That's what I mean. From a standpoint of seeing these guys and getting them for wrongdoing, the witnesses, the former Nazis, are the ones that have the evidence.
Yep.
But as far as condemning these as the evil pieces of shit that they are, and really just basically putting the noose around the neck, are going to be the survivors.
Yeah, the concentration camp survivors aren't going to be able to point to Speer and say he did this, this, and this.
Okay, yes.
But they're going to be able to do the atrocities. Whereas as soon as the former Nazis start rolling in,
Which makes sense. Now that you're saying about it, the order is perfect because what you're doing is you're bringing in these people who are tying them to these things. Then you're bringing in the people who are talking about those specific things so they know exactly who on the stand they're fucking looking at when they're talking.
Yeah, pretty good. The defendants just basically lose their shit. Goring, in and of himself, the first to show up is this Commander Otto Ollendorf. He was the commander of, I believe it was the Einstürzgruppen. It was an SS death squad. And when he comes in and Goring sees him and he knows exactly who he is, he starts leaning over the other defendants saying stuff like, where the fuck did they get this guy? Did we not kill him? Why is he here? Why did he turn on Germany? Why is he being a witness to this stuff? And I mean, when we're talking about Ollendorf, the Einstürzgruppen admitted to murdering 80,000 people under the commands of Ollendorf that were handed down by these SS generals.
So this guy, I guess you can't say former Nazis, because former Nazis would suggest that these people are coming in willingly of their own accord. This guy is basically like, I have a bunch of names and a bunch of information that are going to help you get these big guys that you're trying to go after. I know I'm waiting my turn.
Yep.
This is not getting me out.
Ollendorf ends up going under trial himself and being sent to prison for a long time.
Yeah.
But you have these guys who Goring either thought were killed so they couldn't talk or were so rock solid for the Germans, and they start showing up. There was an SS general named Erich van dem Bazelet. Long ass
Von
name.
dem Bogzulewski.
Yeah, he's got a lot of names. He testified to the direction of troops that was Ollendorf. What he testifies to is he admitting to killing partisans to cover up the mass murders of the Jews. So now you're admitting that the orders were to fight partisan wars as a cover for going and killing in Jews. And those are coming down from the top of the SS.
So basically you have these partisans within Germany.
Yep.
People.
Well, and within foreign countries,
and
too.
within foreign countries that are traveling throughout the countries. You know, they might not know that they're partisans or anything like that. But if these people, again, not only was there a French resistance, there was a German resistance. There's a guy, fucking can't remember his name, but he was a guy that was actually pretty high up in German high command that was actually part of this. I believe he was also part of the plot that we talked about when we did the organization taught. We talked about the Wolf Slayer and Hitler trying to get killed within that conference room and everything.
Operation, I don't remember.
Valkyrie,
yes.
Yes. So he had a hand in that. He wasn't there at the location or anything like that, but he ends up being known as someone that was actually working with, and he has people come forward from the German resistance being like, this was actually the guy that was feeding us information that we could then turn over and try to feed information for factories or troop movements to the Allies.
Yeah. November 30th might be my favorite day of the trial.
Sorry, but what I meant by that, my long-winded thought, was you had partisans who were against the Nazi regime. There were people like that, not only in Germany, but again, more so in other countries. But to find those people to stop them from getting out the information about the Holocaust, like, I don't even know what to say to that.
Yeah, it's kind of their modus operandi. You got to cover up to cover up.
But at the same time, you're admitting that it's not just probably people in other countries. You're admitting to your people as well, and it's come out that, like, you were killing German citizens.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all of this is a reality check for every German that's following this whole entire thing. And we mentioned it a little bit in Nuremberg, but this is happening so recently after the war that there's Jews that are being released from these concentration camps that are going back to trying to find their families inside of Germany.
Yeah.
Like, this is a full rebuilding process where the general world, the greater world who wasn't affected or touched by the war, is focusing in on this kind of for the beef, for the juice. Meanwhile, you have all these people that are...
The catharsis. They want that catharsis feeling of saying, this is going to put an end to it. The people that did the things are going to be found guilty of their wrongdoings, then we'll be able to put this to bed. And hopefully because of this, we'll never have to experience something like this, because that's what it was touted as. This is what this is supposed to prevent.
Yeah, when in reality, you have all of these war-torn countries that are just trying to put the pieces back together.
But maybe that also does help them just on a emotional level try to heal, knowing that instead of just saying, hey, these guys got away, or hey, these guys were just killed. Yeah, that gives you a temporary satisfaction. But then at the same time, to paint them for what they actually are, what they did, to bring to light what they put you through, and to then have everybody know that they're paying for what they put you through, or your country through. I think there's got to be something even just fractionally healing about that.
Yeah, even if it's just a little bit, at least it's a drop in the bucket towards moving on.
Yeah.
I don't think you and I were the only ones that were affected of the liberation footage. The very next day, on, I believe it was November 30th, they showed the video on the 29th. So yeah, November 30th, Hess raises his hand in the defendant's box. He goes, I have something I need to say. And prosecution's looking over like, oh, this is the guy that we were worried about being nuts. What is he? Yeah, let's put him on the stand. Judges, you cool with it? Sure.
They don't put him on the stand yet. He makes the announcement in the docket, and then they decide that they're able to put him on the stand because they got a shit ton of stuff against him too.
So Hess comes up with this written statement, and it goes, I want to do this in a German accent, but I got to focus on it because the spacing's weird. At the beginning of the proceedings this afternoon, I gave my defense counsel a note saying that I thought I can't even do it. That I thought the proceedings could be shortened if I would be allowed to speak. I wish to say the following. In order to forestall the possibility of my being pronounced incapable of pleading, because again, they thought he was nuts, in spite of my willingness to take part in the proceedings and to hear the verdict alongside my comrades, I would like to make the following declaration before the tribunal. Although I originally intended to make it during a later stage of the trial, henceforth, my memory will again respond to the outside world. The reasons for simulating loss of memory... Yeah, it's magic, right? The reasons for simulating loss of memory were of a tactical nature. Now he's just admitting what he did. Like, I was playing a mental game with you.
Got you, fuckers.
Only my ability to concentrate is in fact somewhat reduced, but my capacity to follow the trial and to defend myself, to put questions to the witnesses, and to answer questions of myself is not affected thereby. I emphasize that I bear full responsibility for everything that I did, signed or co-signed. My fundamental attitude that the tribunal is not competent is not affected by the statement that I have just made. I also simulated loss of memory in consultations with my officially appointed defense counsel. He has therefore represented me in good faith. This is kind of a bombshell because they were trying to figure out if this guy was mentally fit to stand trial. All these psychologists were working, or psychiatrists were working on him trying to figure this out. They didn't think that he could stand trial. So he was pretty good. The reactions of his other fellow defendants are pretty funny. It stated that Goring was amazed and upset while he enjoyed the frustration of the court, demonstrated considerable resentment that they had been so completely fooled. Von Sirich felt that such behavior was not the action of a normal man. While he enjoyed Hess's jest upon the world, he felt it was not a gesture expected of a good German whose position was as important as that of Hess.
Some of these guys have also just got to be thinking, this was something I thought I wasn't going to have to worry about because this guy knows shit on me. Now, not only do I have to worry about him talking, but this dude is obviously a little bit crazy for trying to pull this shit off. So now I have no idea what he's going to say. But then the argument is also going to come back on him that this guy is obviously mentally unstable, so you can't believe anything he's going to say.
Yeah. Von Ribbentrop was shocked. It says, Von Ribbentrop, upon learning the news, was dumbfounded and hardly able to speak when told Hess's statement, and merely kept repeating, Hess? You mean Hess? The Hess we have here? He said that? Ribbentrop became quite agitated and seemed to feel such action was not possible. He stated, but Hess did not know me. I looked at him. I talked to him. Obviously, he did not know me. It is not possible. Nobody could fool me like that.
This is just straight up denial, man. It's basically their version of being like, fuck.
It's just so funny that he kind of got away with this. Finally, of course, Streicher says, as usual, direct and blunt. If you ask me, I think Hess's behavior was a shame. It reflects on the dignity of the German people. This is the guy that would get up every morning and strip butt ass naked and do stretches in front of all of the other inmates inside the prison. That wasn't good enough for this guy?
Yeah, I don't know if he expected that to come out for a while.
No. British prosecution starts December 4th, only lasts 4 days, and it's pretty redundant with what the United States was saying.
They kind of doubled up on a lot of stuff. And you know for a fact that the U.S., the Brits are over there being like, fuck, you said you were going to let us cover that. Sorry, man, I was on a roll.
I was hot.
I had a hot hand. I was going to throw it out there. And by the time it gets down to it, they're like, you left us like 4 days of material. It's like, you're welcome.
The judges, he's like, man, the judges started grilling us for more direct evidence. I know that was your evidence, but he was attacking me. I had to figure out something to do. So I threw you guys under the bus.
Good job, guys. We did it.
They did detail a lot of the broken treaties, which, of course, if you're trying to talk about disruption of peace, a broken treaty will disrupt peace faster than anything. The U.S. flipped back to this organization side, lumping in together all of these organizations that weren't on trial, basically saying, we wanted to go after more of you. This is where the concrete evidence is, but we can also tie you to the organizations that are on
There's
trial.
There's going to be some RICO shit.
Yeah. Kaltenbrunner finds himself in a lot of trouble here because there were multiple survivors of the Mauthausen concentration camp that put him at the camp witnessing during visits, watching executions in the gas chambers at the gallows, and then the shootings that were happening.
I'm gonna try to get through this. So watching these people kind of talk about like their experiences in the camp and everything like that. There was a guy that basically served. He was, when they got to the camps. And if we do get to, it's not that we don't want to cover the Holocaust because it's such an important thing to talk about. It's fucking taxing to just submit yourself to like 5 straight days of watching this kind of stuff. Having to watch a 1-hour video, I'm going to need to watch a lot of Ted Lasso to get over that. I had to keep taking Lasso breaks, actually.
Did you dream about it?
I tried to not do it up until a few hours before I was going to sleep.
I watched it at 4 p.m, and I still dreamt about it.
Yeah, you got to watch more Lasso. But some of the things are so horrific, like the guy that was getting rid of the clothes. Basically, he would just be piling clothes upon clothes, and he knew exactly where they were coming from because he was there when they made them strip naked and walk naked to the gas chambers, separating them out between people that could be sent to work camps, to the forced labor programs, which are going to come into play here in a second, and then any of the infirmed or elderly or motherfucking kids were killed the quickest because they serve no use. And there was one testimony of a woman talking about how, I'm not sure what camp it was, but she was detailing how they wouldn't even gas some of the kids. They would put them straight into the crematories. And she knew that because you could hear the screams. And some of these places that, some of these guys helped design, we're going to talk about the Zyklon B and all that kind of stuff. Some of these camps had these gas chambers that would house and fit 2,000 people at a time. And I don't know.
They said that they knew when to go in and start pulling the bodies out of the gas chambers because they just stopped hearing screams.
Yeah.
And they were brought into these chambers under the guise and stripped naked by saying, we're going to allow you to shower.
Or delouse.
And so,
because you just got off the trains and everything like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And you see in these videos just racks of clothes. And you know that every one of those sets of clothes.
And then them going in and fucking prying the gold out of their fucking teeth. And then keeping them in these large boxes, these like fucking treasure huts that they would go into. And you see the Allies fucking a bucket of fucking gold fillings. And then like all the jewelry that they made them take off when they got there.
It was a dark realization. It might be just a touch graphic, but when you see the bodies and you see that their mouths are open, you wonder if that's how they passed away. And then you realize that their mouths are open because they were open to pry out or look for gold in their mouths.
Yeah.
That's just how far they went.
And this ties just kind of go, and I have some information about kind of the things and who was tied to it. This indicts a lot of different people from a lot of different areas throughout kind of the whole apparatus, the Nazi apparatus.
Yeah. I'd like to switch to something lighter, but we're right in the middle of it. Kaltenbrunner was also caught because he was ordering executions while he was at the camp. There were people that testified to Kaltenbrunner killing people himself at these camps. There was a Gestapo official named Bertus Gertis. Okay, that's kind of fun. Bertus Gertis, who testified of Kaltenbrunner's plan to liquidate several concentration camps and kill inmates near the end of the war. He was a first-hand account and in the room when he heard Kaltenbrunner talking about this.
And a common thing that happened anytime any of these concentration camp survivors would get up there, you would just collectively see the fucking Nazis take off their headphones because they didn't want to listen to it.
Well, and they knew. They just...
I would have fucking, as an MP and as one of those judges, I would have been like, nope.
Back on.
Put them back on, or we're going to put them on for you and hold them on.
We're going to staple those things to the side of your face. Mm-hmm. You're not getting those things off. French prosecution begins January 17th. They'll run all the way to February 7th. They got a lot to say. They end up doing the thing that they were trying to avoid from World War I, and they kind of put German history on trial. They present the case that Nazi ideology was born from this 19th century belief in this nationalist pan-Germanism. And we've talked about it a number of times. We always think about Germany as being one of these old countries, but in the 19th century, Germany was on the rise. Mm-hmm. They were cruising because
like Weimar Republic time and everything.
When you talk about World War I, they're being aligned with the Ottoman Empire and with Austria-Hungary, who was a major player. And really the emphasis for World War I, besides Franz Ferdinand getting shot, was kind of Germany trying to stretch its legs in Europe to see where they fell on the pecking order. Mm-hmm. So when you have this ultra-nationalist...
That everyone just had aggression pacts with everybody else to go to war if this guy went to war, and go to war if this guy went to war. Yeah.
And you have this pan-Germanism feeling of, even though we're not talking about Germany proper, there's the Germanic people that are spread out in this area that, makes them a superpower.
Probably didn't help that the French, when they were talking about the Treaty of Versailles, and they're like... They probably tried to frame it, I would imagine, as you have a history of doing this. This is a repetitive action that you're doing. But by doing that and saying, and then we had to do this after the war just to try to keep you from doing it, and it didn't work. And they're listing out all the shit that they did for the like insane reparations and all the stuff that allowed this feeling of despair to kind of permeate Germany, which allowed fucking Hitler to come in and be like, I can fix everything. And everyone was like, okay. That probably didn't turn out well for them. But again, aside from all the other fucking countries, if you're thinking about a country that has the most to be embarrassed about getting rolled over in 6 weeks to 2 months, it's the French. And I think this is because they also had to sit out a lot of the war. I think this is their way of trying to kind of make their big splash, and it doesn't land quite like they hoped it would.
No, they do make some good points, because as they're talking about this nationalist pan-Germanism, they lay out the case for German complicity at the same time, because they're basically, the point that they're drawing at is these Germanization annexations that you were talking about with Czechoslovakia and with Austria were basically a crime against humanity. Because just because you say the Germans are in these areas, so they're ours, doesn't account for all of the natural-born Austrians that weren't of German descent that were taken in under...
And how many Germanic people does it take to be in a further area for you to feel like you can go in to liberate them?
Yeah. Another one that they kind of pushed for was they would bring in French citizens as witnesses to basically point out all of these German atrocities that were committed in France. They pointed to the mass deportation of French Jews and other parts of Western Europe because, again, they're in charge of the Western Front. And as that's going on, they're scoring some big points because we're still talking about this underlying final solution. we're focusing on the military, we're focusing on the financial apparatuses, and the underlying play is you were deporting these French Jews and these other Western European Jews. Where were you sending them? You were sending them to concentration camps.
There was documentation that they presented called the Wannsee Protocol. It was developed during in a place called Wannsee. And basically in 1942, this was the conference, the Wannsee Conference, that coordinated the final solution. And I believe Wilhelm Stuttgart was the only one out of the people being tried that was physically there. But this being a conference that a major decision is being made on, you know that information was disseminated to every branch that had anything to do, even logistically, with completing the final solution. That includes forced labor programs, that includes transportation programs, that includes the industry in which would use the forced labor, that would include all of the munitions that were using, again, forced labor. It tied so many of these guys to this. There was also this thing called the Bullet Decree that they brought up as evidence, and this stated that recaptured POWs, so people that had been taken into custody by Germany, escape, and then were recaptured again, were to be turned over to the security services, SD, I think it was, or SA, and to be executed.
So they didn't get a chance to go back to...
Yeah, they weren't going to take a chance on them escaping again.
Yeah, I can understand wholly why the French have an axe to bear. I mean, I think we all can understand that. At the same time, they talked about trying not to put the impetus on the German public. And it seems like talking about German history being put on trial and then talking about the complicity of Germany, that sort of goes counter to probably what everybody else was hoping for.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the French had a fucking axe to grind, man.
Yeah, they did. I can't blame them for doing it. An odd axe to grind, maybe a double-edged axe to grind. Soviets.
A sickle and hammer to grind.
Yeah. The Soviets begin on February 8th. They cover the whole board of charges pointing to all these acts that were committed by the German occupiers in the Eastern Front. I don't find fault in the Soviets in any part of that. It definitely makes sense. Unfortunately, they're talking about a time after the quote-unquote unprovoked invasion. Now, quote-unquote unprovoked invasion, it was certainly unprovoked. It was unprovoked because they had this treaty to stay out of the area.
It was a surprise invasion.
Yeah. So they had a secret treaty that was basically in their back pocket to be like, they shouldn't have come after us. But at the same time, you don't want to release too much of that treaty because we're talking about Poland again.
This one got aimed at William Keitel, and amongst others, anyone that had to facilitate the transport of troops and know where the troop movements, the money had to go, was all had knowledge of this. But Keitel basically established what was known as the Barbarossa Decree. And this was kind of like I was talking different doctrines of how to fight against different enemies. This basically was how to fight against the Soviets. His defense in this whole thing was I merely passed on the orders defense, which everyone tries to use that defense in regards to this, and it doesn't fly. So he had orders condoning killing of POWs and civilians. These two ones that stand out to me are the Commissar Order. So the Commissar Order commanded the summary execution of any Soviet political commissars. A commissar was a person who was a member or an official of the Communist Party who was placed within military units to basically keep an eye on and make sure everyone was being a good communist. So the communists didn't trust the soldiers. Of course, we talked about Stalin and everything like that. We know how that whole situation was handled. If you've listened to that episode, it shouldn't be surprising.
No surrender.
But these were the guys that if someone was kind of not towing the party line or anything, would probably take them out back, give them a warning, or just shoot them in the head. But they had this position that, for the Nazis anyway, that if they located these Communist Party members, that they were to execute them, kind of no ifs, ands, or buts. They also had this thing called the Night and Fog Order, and that called for the arrest and disappearance of resistance fighters and helpers. So anyone that was found to be essentially, and the classification, I'm guessing, was pretty fucking broad when it came to resistance fighters, and was probably even more broad when it came to helpers. Anybody could be suspected as a resistance fighter. And if you want to talk about helpers, well, your grandma did actually live with you. We don't know if she was helping you or not. And even if you are not guilty about doing any type of resistance activity, if we suspect you of it, why not just err on the careful side and take you and your nana in?
Yeah, even if you might not be guilty, you also might.
And again, that's not just the arrest. That's making them disappear.
Disappearance.
Yeah, they called it that because they would disappear in the night in the fog.
Oh. Soviets had a trick up their sleeve. They had an ace in the hole. They ended up pulling Field Marshal Friedrich Paulus out of a hat, basically, because after Stalingrad and after they took, what was it? It was like 60,000 German troops?
Yeah, the pocket or whatever it was called. Yeah.
They took the pocket after Paulus surrendered. I think it was like 6,000 Germans of that group made it back to Germany alive. They kept Paulus, and they treated Paulus as good as the Soviets could treat anybody. Mm-hmm. And then when it came time...
He was alive.
Yeah. And then it came time for the trial. Paulus ends up showing up on the stand. It's a pretty big deal. I mean, Paulus was a very high-ranking guy. He was a field marshal that was sent into Stalingrad.
Yeah.
Which is going to play big for the Soviet side.
What was the name of the guy that Hitler told no field marshal had ever surrendered? Was that Paulus?
Yeah.
It was?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, he kept bumping up Paulus's rank to try to keep him in there. And
then force basically the tradition of a field marshal never surrendering or being taken alive. But he was.
Yeah. Well, I think it was smart. He ends up naming Jodl, Keitel, and Goring is most responsible for Operation Barbarossa. POW crimes were obviously a highlight for the Soviet prosecution because they ended up throwing up a number that I have no problem believing. In fact, I think it's probably on the low side. More than 3 million Soviet POWs and hundreds of thousands of Leningrad residents who died of starvation. If we're talking crimes against humanity, that feels like it checks the box pretty well. Mm-hmm. During this whole entire time that the prosecution is putting on these cases, you're getting calls from these delegations in these countries being like, you got to bring this up. Why aren't you nailing them down on this? This was an atrocity that happened in our country. Yeah. Our country deserves to be named in the evidence that you're bringing forward. So you kind of have certain things that end up getting thrown in as far as they were mixing some Soviet nationalities in with the systematic murder of the Jews that were being pulled out of Russia. And again, Russia wasn't a real big friend of the Jewish population anyway.
It was near Poland, though, and at the same time, people geographically spread out.
Yeah. It just, these forced labor deportations that they are throwing out there to say we saw this many people leave on a train and they were put into these slavery camps.
This forced labor thing was a huge point during these trials because it could tie so many different, I guess, what am I trying to say here? Like it could tie the military, it could tie industry, it could tie the economy and everything to it. And the two people that got tied to this very heavily were Fritz Sockel and then Albert Speer. And I can't remember if it was, I think it was Speer was up there and was talking about how I had no idea that this was actually forced labor or anything like that. In fact, it's ridiculous to think that we would even use forced labor because labor is only effective if the laborer's heart is in it. So for us to have forced labor where they wouldn't even want to really try to work that much, that just wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't have allowed that to happen. But it did fucking happen because you had people being sent from concentration camps that were able to work to these work camps to build munitions, to build airplane parts and all this kind of stuff that were worked to death, and then just new people were brought in.
Your lie just falls in on itself immediately. Like, for Speer to get up and say something like that, it's clearly not believable that
there was like 14 million people that were in forced labor, and you're like, so you didn't notice an extra 14 million people that you were able to assign to all of these jobs that actually had pretty high mortality rates? You didn't think that it was weird that they kept having to replace these people?
Yeah, darn, you thought they were paying out settlements to everybody that died in your factory's families?
Yeah.
Come on.
There was nice housing, 3 meals a day, all that stuff.
Yeah, not a chance. Soviets also did take this opportunity to throw in a few acts that were committed by the NKVD, some stuff that was going inside their own country or going on inside their own country that maybe they were committing that they figured, well, the Germans were here when these things happened. Maybe we can hang it on them.
Who's going to come into the Soviet Union and investigate this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The defense would counter with some arguments saying that there just weren't any Germans in the areas where these atrocities were happening and they could document where the troop movements were and that they were never in these areas. I don't know if this was trying to one-up the United States. They would also show 3 films, and they come off in a very similar vein. One of the films was footage of the Auschwitz and the Majdanek liberations. They're just more gruesome. We know that Auschwitz was kind of the top stack when it came to a concentration camp, and just the sheer volume and the inhumane treatment from Rudolf Höss.
It's that Soviet disposition of already having seen some pretty heinous shit, being able to stomach, put that other stuff on film, or feeling necessary to actually show it.
They actually didn't make the same mistake that the United States did, because the United States, the second film that they put on was basically to try to prove the fanaticism that went into the rise of the Nazi Party. And it fell short because it didn't incriminate anybody, and it wasn't really a crime to do what they were doing. But at the same time, all of the defendants in the box, you could almost see them sitting up a little bit straighter, because it was kind of like a highlight reel of the greatest hits that they had coming to power.
They were kind of trying to do what the French did, it sounds like, a little bit.
Somewhat, but you have Goring sitting over in the box, kind of stamping his feet, and you can hear him saying some of the cheers underneath his breath.
I hate that these motherfuckers got to wear sunglasses, some of them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how bright it could have been in that courtroom.
It's because they didn't want to have to be seen looking away or closing their eyes or ignoring the shit.
Yeah, it doesn't happen in any other trials. It seems like a fair trial would be no sunglasses. Both of the bankers were looking around like this. How is this a crime? Nationalism isn't a crime. They're just still completely not understanding the gravity of what those things led to in putting all those pieces together. Kind of the ending defense or the ending prosecution for the Russians, they brought concentration camp survivors in that came back to Russia to talk about just what they endured.
What did the previous military guy, Paulus, what did he end up?
He basically went through and laid out everybody that was complicit in the planning of Operation Barbarossa.
And then probably discussed the war crimes that had occurred under his command,
that he had seen. Also, probably with the prosecution not asking any questions about what the Russians were doing.
Yeah, exactly. Describe only what the Germans did.
From March to July, the defense, this was their time to shine. They had to put on a show. The mountain of evidence that was just placed at their feet. They got to see it before the trial, through discovery and all that kind of stuff. The one weird rule was they didn't have a witness list. So everybody that was compelled to testify, they didn't know who was going up to testify. That seems kind of weird to me. I mean, I would think in a normal trial, each side would know kind of the witnesses to be able to build up.
Nowadays, that's standard, I think.
Cross, yeah. And during the whole time that this is happening, you have the Germans cross-examining these witnesses on the stand. So you get them fighting with these old SS officers that come in to turn them in, trying to discredit them by pointing to the wrongs that they committed, not really understanding that the chain of command for the wrongs that were committed were actually coming down from the people that they were trying to defend to do these acts.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if they're saying that it's not a defense to say you were just following orders, that makes them criminals as well.
Yeah.
I can't imagine surviving the Holocaust in a concentration camp and dealing with just the absolute bullshit that was done to you and then getting questioned by a former Nazi.
Yeah.
It takes a different kind of person just to be able to survive that questioning and not get up and try to choke the guy's eyes out.
I think the only thing that could possibly fuel that is knowing that what you're saying is what happened it doesn't change what happened. So he can ask you anything they want. And if he wants to get into the particulars, it's just going to make them look worse.
Yeah.
No one's on these guys' side.
Well, Kaltenbrunner is getting pointed at in pictures while he's sitting in the box by these Holocaust survivors. Just how bad does that look? To hear them say it, but then be like, can you point to the guy? Is he in the room with us today?
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, he right there. That's him. It's just solid proof. So the defense has to go up just trying to do what they can. Mostly this consists of shifting blame. As we were just talking about, the I was just following orders defense isn't a defense that they can use because you have free will ultimately. That's the whole thing. And them trying to play up this, there was no crime.
That might come into play during some of these other trials that take place, the smaller ones from somebody who is a sergeant or something like that. You don't get to use that excuse because half the time the orders were only one above you.
Yeah.
You knew about them, or you issued the orders, or the orders were issued below you and you had knowledge of them. You're where that buck starts or stops as far as this is concerned.
Everybody, except for Goring, of course, would downplay their significance. They were just ancillary characters. They were tertiary characters. They were outside of the sphere of influence.
Well, like you said, Carl Donitz, his whole thing was like, I was busy doing the Navy. All my stuff was out in the ocean. Like my attention wasn't inland or anything like that. One of the things that got brought against him was there was a, basically what would happen is if the U-boats would sink a ship or something like that, there was an issue put out they were talking about, and the information against Donitz specifically was a little spotty, but there were several missives put out that said, hey, the Americans can replace these ships. They can't replace the crews that quickly. So if we deprive them of both the ships and the crews, it helps us win this war. And so you had instances where U-boats would sink a ship, and it was supposed to be international law that you were supposed to look for and rescue for survivors or put them in a position where they could be rescued. And they were gunning down sailors in boats.
That sounds like war crimes.
Yeah, and they were able to say that he was far enough away from those, and the instances were not frequent enough to support that it was like a standing order to do that, and that he wasn't tied for any of his orders that he issued. But they read some stuff, and it was saying we're going to deny them the ability to do this, and he's like, that's really vague. Like denied them, like that could be anything.
Yeah, deny them could just be to point them the other direction.
Yeah, it's not gunning them down. It's denying them the ability to quickly get back to, where they can start sailing again.
The you did bad shit too offense or defense. It's interesting. I mean, not wrong.
That's the argument of like, I find it to be a mockery of justice that I'm sitting here while you're the one accusing me of doing something when you've done it yourself. And it's like, buddy, you fucking started this shit.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement. At the same time, it is something that I would say kind of makes the court, because we're hearing all these German atrocities.
I think in hindsight, I think looking at it from our perspective, also having the perspective of hearing kind of what went on during some of these battles and stuff like that, all the focus is on the wrongdoing that these guys did. So even when they come out and say, like, you were doing this too, that might be a side note on a journalist, like, oh, look into this. But at the same time, nothing that they're going to say, especially after seeing the videos and hearing from these survivors and things like that, nothing they say is going to be a drop of fucking water in the bucket.
It's not a win, but it does it plants a seed, I would say.
It might put a seed of doubt in certain things that they're trying to prosecute you with and everything, but nothing that the fucking Allies did is anywhere close to this.
No, it's certainly not. My point is...
Well, not all the Allies.
No, yeah, one of them. One of them definitely for sure.
Yeah.
He was close to on par, not with the Jew stuff, or not with the Holocaust, but everything else, the war atrocities.
He did some shit to his own people that was pretty bad.
Yeah, he was right there. But it almost, even if a year after this trial happens, people start looking into it and trying to pick stuff apart and say, well, what were the Germans talking about? What war atrocities did you guys commit? Then it might lay just a little bit of like, hey, he wasn't wrong. Like it's not a win in court, but at the same time, it does kind of put a little pressure back on the Allies.
Well, it does help that the judges bar any evidence against Allied crimes are not to be heard in court. This is the classic, this isn't about us, this is about you right now. Once we get done cleaning up your mess, then we'll take a look back at the records and see if there's anything we need to address on our side. But for right now, this is all about you guys.
Court also just repeatedly kept shutting down the attempt at trying to get the entirety of the Molotov-Ribbentrop pact on record. So the defense would start going into it, and the Russian judge would just immediately tell him to stop talking.
Order in the court?
Yeah. And I guess it took like 5 or 6 tries, but finally they get like the entirety of it, just sneaking it in. And at the same time, the judges all said, we're not going to take any of that into account. Like it's not under our purview.
And I mean, some of these guys, do you have anything during the lines of questioning, I remember one of the things Goering said was, do you regret any of this? And part of his answer was, I can only regret we didn't have enough V1s and V2s, because he believed, as he explained, that had he had more V1s and V2s, he would have been able to inflict more casualties on England to have them either come to the negotiating table or try to stop the war, and it could have saved Berlin. And then also basically comes out and says, I would have continued fighting the Allies regardless of the circumstances.
We got to talk about Goering's testimony on cross.
Here's the other thing, too. I don't know if we've mentioned this. So doing the psychological studies, a bunch of these guys, at least a dozen, if not more, had high IQs. The top guy, I think, had 138. Goering had like a 128, something in that range. Albert Speer had a 128. So these were not stupid people, which means they couldn't take the ignorance route out of this thing and saying, I really didn't know what was going on. Well, the way that your brain works apparently tells us that that's not the case. But, I mean, these guys were technically a very high IQ. A lot of them were anyway.
Yeah, I mean, we've debated multiple times, was Hitler a genius? Was he a dummy? We've pretty much come up with he's a dummy with a great personality, or with a magnetic personality.
A charismatic moron.
Yeah, yes. And just because you're a charismatic moron doesn't mean that you're not attracting smarter people that are going to further your position.
Or doesn't mean you don't have the ability to feign intelligence, to sell just enough of it that people believe you know more than you do.
Yeah, I could see that. Goering has a tough time trying to say that he wasn't very smart and that he was easy to push around.
He's thin. He's focused when they get him here. And like you said, like he gave the U.S. prosecutor kind of a runaround, didn't he?
Jackson, 2.5 days they had him on cross-examination. And that's, I don't know if court was 8 hours, but even if you're going to say it's 8 hours, that's 20 hours of having him on the stand being questioned.
He was the top official. He was the big fish. He was the one, if you did anything, you had to get him.
And we're talking about stretching back to him and Jackson going at each other about the fire that happened in the Reichstag, because he had a kind of a secret pathway to where he was staying to the court. And when Jackson is asking him these questions about the Reichstag fire, he's responding with, I'm sorry, that was a bad translation. Or, can you repeat that? I didn't quite get the full understanding of what you said. And Jackson's just getting more and more frustrated. And then he starts tripping over his words. And then he's trying
to find words that if this guy doesn't understand, he's like, what do I need to say so it translates through in German? I know this guy's full of shit, but I have to try to maintain this for just the process of the court.
And as Goering is on the stand just denying any knowledge of being a part of the Reichstag fire, he's asking him questions about the timing of it, because right after the Reichstag fire, that was kind of used to expel all of the other parties from the court.
Mm-hmm. That's when they use that as a jumping off point to kind of take majority control.
Yeah, he asked him if he knows anything about it. He says absolutely not. He then talks about the corridor, and immediately Goring responds back with, it wasn't really a corridor. It was more like a breezeway for the air to come through. It wasn't big enough to be a corridor. And Jackson then shows one of the exhibits, which was notes that were taken at a meeting, basically Goring laying out getting all of the accelerants and the fire bombs through that passageway into the Reichstag. And he just starts up again saying, I don't really understand what you're talking about. It was just a corridor. This isn't anything that you can really pin on me because you can't prove that I was there. Jackson says the affidavit that you're looking at says that you were talking about this passageway. And we go right back into Goring saying, well, it wasn't a passageway, though. Just round and round they go.
Trying to poke little holes to create so little seeds of doubt in the story itself, yeah.
He gets grilled about the final solution and the plans of the final solution. And Goring refers back to translation issues, saying, I think you didn't quite understand what you were reading. The actual translation says the total solution, not the final solution to the Jewish question.
And of course, there was the most popular name to place the blame on, following orders. Hitler was mentioned 1,200 times, along with Himmler, Reinhard, Heydrich, and then Adolf Eichmann, and then also, the not known at that time, the dead Bormann.
Well, yeah, besides Eichmann at this point in time, what do all those guys that just caught the blame have in common?
They all killed themselves, right?
Yeah, they're all dead.
Yeah.
So they're the easiest ones to blame.
You also had evidence being brought up that the Nazis were considering and had put in place plans to use poison gas. I can't remember the names of both of them. Sarin was one of them, and I can't remember the other one. But they were doing additional questioning, and 10,000 tons were shipped out to certain areas that they could use on the front lines. And then they were like, well, how did you produce all this? They're like, oh, we have 3 factories that were making poison gas for us.
Tough.
It's a tough look.
Yeah. They scored some points, I would say, with some of the defendants, but on the whole, it just was a lot of lies. A lot
as
of
you can imagine,
downplaying their roles. And I mean, some of them, I'm not going to say that they had an argument, but Hitler's inner circle wasn't just a solid lineup.
Oh, no, it was jockeying for position. It was backstabbing. It was trying to, the guy below you was going for your job. And so if he could throw you under the bus, it's not going to be beneficial here unless it's trying to reduce his sentence. But at the same time, these guys were not friendly until they wanted to be friendly when they got in that docket.
Yeah, it's just shifting the responsibility around, saying, well, I wasn't Hitler's flavor of the week when this was ordered.
Yeah.
August 31st, closing finally begins. August 31st. This gets started November 20th, I believe it was, 1945. We're all the way August 31st, 1946. This trial has drug on for so long, and it's not from a lack of speed as far as they were getting hung up on things, because they were doing things every day. It's just the pace when you're doing all of this translating and you have defense that's trying to get things thrown out.
And a war's worth of evidence.
Yeah.
And so many crimes.
Well, at the same time, they're still out finding things, but they're not able to enter that. This could have been a trial that lasted for years.
As they brought in new evidence.
If they had allowed that, it would have gone on forever. Regardless, August 31st, as closing begins, the gears that powered the Holocaust kind of become overshadowed by these aggressive war charges. Genocide is mentioned by all of the prosecutors. This was odd, except for the Americans. The Americans were still pressing on aggression because that's what got them into the war, right? Mm-hmm. So you can't try to talk about atrocities when you're across the pond hanging out.
Yeah.
You didn't see a whole lot.
It didn't happen enough to you for you to make that a focal point. Someone else is going to go ahead and take. That's supposed to be France's job. If there were atrocities committed in Europe, even against the Allied troops, that was supposed to be their purview.
Yeah, so I can see that for sure. Defendants' closing statements showed basically no remorse, just more lies and denial. Speer, interestingly enough, apologizes to mostly the German people without assuming any personal guilt. He hasn't brought up any of the other victims.
Hey, sorry we lost is what it was.
Yeah. At the same time, the very interesting part of this for the Holocaust deniers out there is at no point in time during the entire trial did any of the defendants deny the allegations of what happened.
It was just that they were not involved.
Yeah. So none of the defendants said, you fabricated that. That's a lie. All the atrocities that were brought up in the trial, they all didn't have an argument against.
Yeah.
that it wasn't real. AI wasn't a thing.
And if anybody has the motivation to lie about this to try to save their own skin, regardless if it's true or false, it's going to be these guys. And so,
Court recesses for deliberations September 2nd. Sentences are discussed. The verdict highlighted a lot of the aggression as the most obvious charge. And I think you can definitely highlight aggression for wars against peace pretty
basically
easily.
just aggression, meaning invading other countries.
Yeah. And I mean, that's
You're the
all it
one
was.
making. You're the one making war.
Yeah. You were aggressive every time you entered a new country. Premeditated conspiracy. This is where we get back to the conspiracy. This is what Chris was talking about earlier. To commit crimes against peace. All this talk, you're not talking about the rise and the ascension. You're talking about from when the plans to figure out Austria and Czechoslovakia would fall under your rule. As soon as that was talked about, that's when this conspiracy to disrupt peace starts. And so you don't have to see a lick of fighting. If you're involved in the conspiracy to start this war of aggression, you're in. You can't be found not guilty.
Doesn't matter if you held a rifle or you ordered someone with a rifle to. Yeah.
All the defendants were charged with crimes against peace. There were only 12 that were convicted. Only 2 charged with crimes against humanity were acquitted. Kind of interesting that you would have an acquittal in trial of this magnitude. Crimes against humanity, you can maybe look at the bankers as 2 guys that didn't commit the crimes. They financed the crimes. There were 4 organizations that were ruled to be criminal. The SS, very clearly. The Gestapo, secret police, sounds like it should be criminal, and it always should be criminal. The SD, so the death squads, and then the leadership corps. You can't have the Nazi leadership corps not be made criminal organization.
Yeah.
Those are just the guys. The numbers here kind of we start to see how this all starts to break down. You have 12 defendants that would be sentenced to death. I'm trying to figure out.
So Goering, Ribbentrop, Keitel, Kaltenbrunner,
Yes.
Rosenberg, Sokol, Size, or however you pronounce it, Hans Frank, and I don't know the other 8 or the other 4.
Let me see.
This is going to be a game of did you say this one? Did you say this one?
Donitz and Raider. Okay, no, that wasn't them.
Yeah, Donitz wasn't sentenced to death.
So there were a few others. We'll play.
The big ones are the ones that were named.
Yeah, we'll try to remember all 22 of these guys that happened. 3 would receive life sentences. 3 would be given consecutive 20 years, then 15 years, then 10 years. 3 were just acquitted. Just let off. When it comes time for the death sentences, Goring does take the easy way out. All 3 acquittals were Van Papen, Schrock, and...
Van Papen was like ancient, so...
Yeah. And Fritsch were the other ones. The ones that were sent to Spandau prison were Hess, Funk, Rader, Donitz, Schirich, Speer, and Neurath. Speer, I believe, went in for the 15 years and ended up not serving all of them, of course. Gets out, starts writing books, becomes this folk hero, I guess you would say, through his spin of what he believed happened, took place. To get back to the day, I guess the day before the executions happened, Goring takes the easy way out. Goring, I don't know what it was. I didn't look into it. I know that he just poisoned himself to kill himself. It was cyanide?
Yeah, so there was a big investigation to find out how this could have happened because, again, this is the main guy that they're trying to go after. There are theories that his wife was able to come visit him before his sentencing was carried out, and that she may have been holding a cyanide capsule in her mouth when they kissed.
What a bitch.
There's also theories that it could have been possibly a guard that was actually helping him try to take, he was wanting medicine or something like that, or he had medicine that had been prescribed to him, but it was really something to help him get access to this, but the guard didn't know what it was. I wouldn't imagine it would be crazy that his wife did that.
Yeah.
I mean, he was probably looking for a way out as often as he could. He knew he wasn't getting out of this situation.
Yeah, I'm not positive in saying that it was the day before the executions, but leading up to the executions, he might have had a visit or multiple, I guess, that this could have happened, this transaction could have happened. Hess ends up, it blows me away to say this, and I sent this to you, and I think that it kind of caught you off guard. Hess commits suicide after being sentenced to life in prison August 17th, 1987.
Yeah, so he almost served his life in prison and then decided in 87 that, no.
You and Rudolf Hess were alive at the same time.
Yeah.
That's kind of wild.
Yeah.
That's a long time to hold out in prison. August 16th, the executions were carried out via hanging. Not a great way to go. There were 3 temporary gallows that were erected in the gym at the Nuremberg prison.
That they had played basketball in the day before, right?
Yep. Yeah, there were two groups of Army soldiers that played basketball in the same court before.
Now, this was going to take place. This was going to be an unceremonious thing. They weren't going to let these guys be martyrs any more than people already maybe made them out to be.
Hell yeah.
It started at 1:30 a.m. and it went to 3 a.m. So they're 12 guys that are going to be hung.
Efficient.
The executioners were John C. Woods, and then also a guy named Joseph Malta, who I believe was like his assistant or his subordinate, just like right underneath him. And there were probably more people in the room that were kind of overseeing stuff that were bringing them into the room.
They had to have witnesses.
MPs that were watching out for security and things like that. I would have loved to be in that room. I don't know if that makes me sound morbid or anything like that, but I don't want to see someone die, but I could definitely put that aside to watch this hour and a half.
I want to say, I don't remember where I heard it, so it could be wrong, because there's a lot of odd sources for this. I want to say that they extended invitations to be witnesses to everybody that testified at trial for the prosecution.
Yeah. That would have been nice.
Yeah.
A little bit more closure.
Yeah, just to witness it.
So they would...
well, last meal. What would you put on the table for your last meal as a German?
Sausage.
Nailed it.
Cold cuts.
Nailed it.
Black bread.
Nailed it.
What was the last one?
Potato salad.
Potato salad, that's right.
German potato salad. And then you wash that down with some tea. I can't imagine... It's a last meal that any German would turn down. I'm sure had Goring known what was being set before him as his last meal,
Would have held off.
he would have held the cyanide until dessert.
The execution, there was some debate on how it was going to be done. Like Adam said, there were 3 of these gallows that were erected in the gymnasium. Basically, they were like, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to bring them in one at a time. We're going to use this gallow. Then we're going to use this alternate gallow. Third one we're not going to use, but just in case one of these 2 gallows breaks, this is our backup right here.
We got to be efficient about this.
We got to be efficient.
Time's of the essence.
So they start bringing them in. Now, the method, apparently there's multiple methods of hanging someone. So you have the preferred method of the English, which is the long drop. The long drop, just like it sounds, is going to drop you down until the neck or the rope goes taut, and then that's going to increase the likelihood of it breaking your neck. There's also one called the standard drop, which is less rope, so it increases the likelihood of the person not breaking their neck and simply strangling. Now, there were some experts that did some reviews, and they're like, we did the percentages of people of witnessed hangings that used the standard drop method. And I think they found that like something of like 30 to 50% didn't break the neck. And so to me, fucking fantastic. Some of these executions, you would think just like, hey, bag on their head, if they even did that, noose around their neck, pull the lever, they go down the trap door, which I might add was made too small. You know, it's got to be on purpose. So then as they dropped and were in free fall for those amount of feet, they would get banged up on the sides and hit the sides and get injured before the rope actually went tight. And
I'd never laugh at this in any other position, but these guys,
yeah,
they had it coming.
So some of them took between 14 and 28 minutes for these executions, which if it's an hour and a half, means some of these guys necks didn't break and they just sat there strangling, which again,
because of the efficiency that they're bringing these guys in and they're alternating these two gallows, the guys that are coming in to get hung are passing the other guys that are still dangling there.
did that happen?
Yeah.
Fuck yes.
They couldn't see the entire body because there was, it was like a partition basically between them. They could see the feet dangling down below.
And then they would not take off the noose. They simply just cut the rope and then they laid them all out on beds with the noose around their necks and everything. And they got their pictures taken.
Christmas card?
Eisenhower's Christmas card. That was definitely Stalin's Christmas card.
Yeah.
100%.
He wanted that for sure.
They made a calendar of the 12 and he made one for every, it was like a opposite Stavi's sexy calendar. It was a Stalin sexy calendar.
Yeah. He chubbed up looking at that every day. Every day he loved walking over there and crossing out a day on that calendar.
The bodies would end up being cremated and then dumped into a river that I can't remember the name.
Yeah, who the fuck cares?
Yep.
It should have been dumped into one of the big pits with all the Holocaust deaths.
No, I wouldn't want to desecrate
you probably want it separate, huh?
Nope,
you don't want to desecrate that grave.
I think that people should, what I think should happen, and I'm just top of my head, I would like them to be dumped into like a pit. And I would like this pit to then have a beautiful monument placed around it. And I would like this pit to have a guardrail surrounding it in which people could walk up, squat over it, pull their dicks out, and simply just piss on the remains of these wastes of human fucking DNA.
Freeze the ashes into ice chips and line them up at the bottom of the urinal. Mm-hmm. Just have everybody come in there and melt away the ice chips.
Just for all of eternity.
Yeah, it'd be pretty nice.
That would be a fun pilgrimage to make for
I'd pay to
historians.
do that. Absolutely. If I could pee on Goring, oh yeah.
Everyone meet at the Nuremberg pit. The Nuremberg piss pit.
There's just bars all around it.
And a line around the block.
Yeah.
It's the most popular fucking tourist destination in Europe.
And the Nuremberg Trials it didn't end anything. We still had the doctor's trial, the camp trials that would go on afterwards. There were also 12 other military trials that were that took place in Nuremberg. Things kind of become convoluted because we knocked this out while everybody was at least on semi-friendly terms. And then you have the elements of the Cold War that start affecting some of these trials that are going on afterwards, because now you have U.S. prosecutors that are starting to get a little bit more open-lipped about what they know happened on the Eastern Front.
Well, not only that, but this is also at a time when they're still putting into effect that division of East Germany, West Germany, East Berlin, West Berlin. And so there's already tensions about that because the Soviets got a bunch of shit, but they probably wanted all of Germany. They weren't happy that they had to share Berlin. So it's like you said, it's already creating the friction is there almost immediately.
Yeah, and it's a shame. It's a bummer that we couldn't keep it together long enough to try to prosecute more of the common enemy.
I really do feel that anyone that the Soviets probably captured that weren't necessary to be shown at this trial, they did their own thing with them. That's just the fact of the matter.
When it came time for them to try to parse out where the prisoners went, the Russians offered to take each and every one of those guys over in East Germany.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't. They were foaming at the mouth, waiting to get those Germans into an East German prison.
And things like this, while Nuremberg is pretty much the crown jewel of these after World War II criminal trials, we still have to cover the Tokyo trials.
Yes.
And also, all of these countries also had their own trials for people that had committed these atrocities or war crimes within their countries. So we're starting with Nuremberg because it's got the name recognition. It's where all the major stuff went down. But Tokyo trials are going to be crazy. Talking about essentially the trials that occurred in China against Japan and everything are going to be, I really feel like that one's going to be insanely eye-opening and equally disturbing.
Yeah, because of what we know of the atrocities that happened in China, they're awful. And I can guarantee there's more that are just lingering under the surface. I would like to try, and I don't want to promise it, but give a good attempt at looking at the doctor's trial and the camp trial, just because I'd like to see some...
discuss Mengele, discuss Eichmann,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. And also it lets us revisit Eichmann. If you've listened to the Nazis Escaping to South America episode, that covers Eichmann, but to be able to revisit that and that amazing fucking kidnapping and everything, it's too good to pass up. So yeah, but then we also get to go back and focus on the trial more, and kind of discuss the nuts and bolts of that.
Yeah, I just don't know if I want to dive into Mengele.
Yeah,
that evidence is going to be rough.
No, I see the hesitation. We'll do this. Let's take it slow with the trials. We'll maybe get away from Europe, maybe do some, Tokyo trials.
Some guys we don't really know about.
Yeah, exactly. Do a little bit of stuff in China, find out what's going on there before coming back to the fucking Angel of Death.
Yep.
All right, man. Sorry if this was depressing. We tried not to let it be, but there was some pretty fucking heavy shit in this.
Well, and if you can take away anything from this episode too, we got a fair trial.
Yeah.
We were able to successfully figure out a better way to handle parsing out blame after a war than we did during World War I. And this sets the stage for Slobodan Milosevic, the guy who the Yugoslavian issues. He is able to be held in judgment. The genocide that I had mentioned earlier in Africa, we had the laws in place at this point in time, and we had the structures through these international tribunals to be able to do that. So they may not be large in number of the wins that they've gotten,
but some good did come of this.
We've gotten justice out of this.
Yeah. Got anything else?
No, I think I'm about trialed out.
Yeah, same here. And you guys got another 3-hour episode. I swear we don't actually plan this. We like to get to 3 hours, but these things just happen to work out like this. So,
and if we're being completely honest, we try to gauge these things, and I don't know if we're anywhere close to what we think it'll happen.
My note system makes no sense whatsoever. I can have 5 pages of notes and it'll be a 2.5 hour episode. I could have 3 pages of notes and it's 3 hours, 3.5.
Yeah, there's so much to a lot of this stuff that it's unfortunate. We see comments of people saying you didn't go into this deep enough. It was a 3-hour episode. If we had gone into any of these other things deeper, that will get their own episodes.
I get too fucking depressing, man.
Yeah, well, and it's just like just because we mentioned something and kind of gloss over it doesn't mean we're not coming back to it for a full episode.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Well, go see the movie when it comes out. Also, if there's a web page for the movie or any type of like Facebook pages or Instagram, comment on that shit and tell them you went and saw the movie because you heard about this stuff on Historically High.
Hell yeah.
All right, we'll catch you on the next one.
Peace.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us for another episode. If you like what you heard, hit that subscribe and like button. Follow us. If you didn't like what you heard, still hit that anyway, because we'll probably cover something in the future that you do like. Please follow us on our social media. Adam, hit him with it.
Our Instagram is Historically High Pod, Historically High POD, and we are on Twitter at Historically High. That's Historically HI.
All right. And if you guys want to send in any feedback, suggestions, hit us up on those two, or you can even do it on Gmail. It's historicallyhighpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again.
Peace.